Hello, everyone. Welcome to OK Let's Talk. I'm your host, Rob. And today we're diving into the latest global reports from all around the world, and we aren't just watching the news, we're breaking down the history and the why behind the headlines to give you a deeper educational perspective. With all of that said, let's get to the analysis. Educational commentary and analysis falls under Fair Use, Section 107. Let's enjoy the stream.
Welcome to Al Jazeera's extensive coverage of the ceasefire in the war between the US, Israel, and Iran. I'm Sami Zaidan. Israel says it will hold direct negotiations with Lebanon. The government in Beirut insists a ceasefire needs to come first. The diplomatic push comes after massive Israeli strikes devastate Lebanese cities. 303 people were killed, more than 1,000 wounded. The assault has put a ceasefire between Iran, Israel, and the United States at risk of collapse. Leaders from Washington and Tehran will hold talks on Saturday. Friends and family members bid farewell to Al Jazeera journalist Mohammed Wishah, who was killed by an Israeli drone strike in Gaza.
And later on, this is America. Ceasefire uncertainty. Will the agreement between the US and Iran hold or return to large-scale hostilities? We look at the differences between the two countries and what could happen next.
Let's find out what happened next. What's going to happen next, everyone? Welcome again.
Lebanon's
Thanks for joining.
Says the only solution to end the bloodshed in his country is a ceasefire with Israel. Joseph Aoun says a truce could be followed by direct negotiations with Israeli officials. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, has asked his cabinet to open direct talks with the Lebanese government.
That's a shock.
He insists disarmament of Hezbollah must be part of the talks. Hezbollah has rejected any talks. The assault on Lebanon, though, has also put a ceasefire between Iran and the United States at risk of collapse. All of that coming
It's already collapsing, isn't it?
Set to be hosted in Pakistan on Saturday. Comes after Israeli forces killed more than 300 people in Lebanon on Wednesday. That's when they launched over 100 strikes in 10 minutes. They were the bloodiest attacks in the country since the US and Israel's war with Iran began. Israel maintains it's targeting Hezbollah military sites. The Lebanese Health Ministry says more than 1,800 people have been killed in total since February the 28th. We're live near Amman, but first let's head over to Heidi Pett. She joins us now from Beirut. So, Heidi, will the Lebanese government agree to hold talks without a ceasefire?
In short, no. The Lebanese president said that his government was open to direct talks with Israel, but then an immediate ceasefire should precede any discussions.
Of course.
He said that this idea has received support from the international community, but it's clear that the wrangling about that is still ongoing. But he was very, very clear that there should be an immediate ceasefire before any talks could take place. Also today, he was stating that he wouldn't tolerate any internal strife here in Lebanon, and he emphasized the role of the state in security. Now, that follows two announcements by the Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, following a cabinet meeting. One, that Lebanon would be making a formal complaint to the Security Council about Israel's attacks yesterday. And secondly, reiterating this commitment to the idea of disarming Hezbollah, this time specifically in the governorate of Beirut. Now, this has been one of Israel's key demands, but it has also been a key objective for the Lebanese government for a long time, preceding this talk of the ceasefire. In fact, it was something that they had committed to doing for a deadline at the end of last year. Now, that obviously passed, and there was no implementation of that because it is practically quite difficult and politically certainly very, very difficult for the Lebanese army and indeed the Lebanese state to start taking direct action that might spark a conflict with Hezbollah, who for its part has rejected the idea of any direct talks with Israel.
And we've seen some exchanges today. Take us through that.
Yes, Israel has continued to strike across Lebanon today. There have been multiple airstrikes in the last hour, as well as a drone attack on a vehicle in Lebanon. We've had the Israeli surveillance drone continuing to fly over the
Bibi's a war
capital.
criminal.
The residents here have a short break at the moment.
This
there
is
is
nuts.
no longer a drone buzzing in the sky, but the sound of that, it penetrates people's homes, leading to frustration and also a great deal of fear, because it usually signals impending attacks.
Of course there's fear.
Clue that we have to that is these fresh forced evacuation orders that have been issued by the Israeli military for Beirut's southern suburbs again today, this time notably including the suburb of Janaa, where there are 2 hospitals. The World Health Organization has sounded the alarm about those orders,
Richard.
saying that those 2 hospitals are operating at capacity, that there is no alternative medical facilities available for the 450 patients that they are currently treating. Now, many of those are the victims of yesterday's airstrikes, and hospitals across the country are completely at capacity, dealing with more than 1,000 people who have been wounded. Now, on the other hand, there have been continued ground operations by Israel in southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah has announced a resumption of attacks after previously pausing them due to their understanding that Lebanon was in fact included in that US-Iran-Israel ceasefire. So we have seen them launching dozens of attacks today, announcing that they have targeted Israeli
Cuba would have
troops
been an easier target
here inside Lebanon, particularly notably in and around the town of Bint Jbeil, which the Israelis have been seeking to encircle and now appear to be trying to enter.
Before Trump moves to Cuba, he might want to clean up his mess here first.
Hilltops and in the surrounding villages, and it seems that over the course of today, they have now begun entering the outskirts of that town, and Hezbollah says that they've been engaging in direct clashes with them there, as well as firing rockets and artillery at those Israeli troops operating here inside Lebanon, as Israel seeks to establish
what they achieve?
What they're calling
Nothing.
A security or a buffer zone in southern Lebanon. And
it's killing innocent people.
Also announced a multiple number of attacks with rockets back into northern Israel.
And that's Heidi Pett from Beirut. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there is no ceasefire in Lebanon and that Israel will continue to target Hezbollah with full
because he likes war criming.
Following repeated appeals from the Lebanese government to enter into peace negotiations with us, last night I instructed the cabinet to open direct negotiations with Lebanon in order to achieve 2 goals. 1, the disarmament of Hezbollah. 2, a historic, sustainable peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon.
Rob McBride is following the Israeli government's reaction from the Jordanian capital, Amman. And Rob, we've heard the Lebanese government say they're not going to negotiate unless there's a ceasefire. Any indication from Israel that it might change that position we just heard outlined by Benjamin Netanyahu if it does want to open talks with Lebanon?
Yeah, in public, at least, the official position of Israel seems to be there will be no let-up.
I agree.
The attacks currently happening against Hezbollah. This is a group that is widely regarded in Israel as being as much of a threat as Iran itself, and in some ways, possibly more of a threat closer to home.
Just keep believing the Israelis.
Israel's backyard.
They wouldn't lie to you.
About 1.5 million people. It's in northern Israel living within the rocket range of Hezbollah just across the border. Many communities along that border have largely been evacuated since the start of this more recent conflict. It accounts for now the momentum building by the Israeli military pushing into southern Lebanon, pushing Hezbollah further north to create this buffer zone, which it's done before, but this time seems to be now more permanent with the relocation of thousands of people from southern Lebanon, and with some more hawkish voices in Israel calling for the Litani River, which is what they're heading for, to become the new border of new northern border of Israel itself. And in order to achieve that, they are still not done. There still needs to be more fighting ahead, which everybody in the Israeli military,
thanks, Danny. Like and subscribe.
Israel itself, especially among more conservative groups, are very cognizant of. As a reminder, it seems, of the threat that Hezbollah faces, the military on Thursday evening said that in the day day up to Thursday evening, there had been 70 rockets fired across the border, with this time Haifa being targeted. This is a very important northern port city of Haifa. It is the first time that it has been targeted since this agreement came into effect between the USA and Iran Tuesday through Wednesday, putting further pressure on that fragile agreement.
So help us resolve this, Rob. Is this, while Israel,
Welcome,
is talking
Leonard.
about escalating, doubling down on the fight, then, and also
Who's the commander?
saying wants
Trump
to
isn't the
talk,
commander of NATO.
Is it seen as having been forced into this position of seeking talks?
Yeah, I think it is widely viewed that Netanyahu has come under pretty extraordinary pressure from the US to try to make these talks happen. Everybody knows that for US President Donald Trump, the continuation of this ceasefire, it seems to be paramount, doesn't want anything to threaten that. We know from reported phone calls between Netanyahu and Trump, especially on Wednesday, that apparently Trump told Netanyahu to low-key it, in his words. This has been apparently now confirmed by Trump himself in talking to US media. From Netanyahu's statements and position, he says he wants to go ahead with these talks. It would be an
talks are fake.
agreement,
they might be.
But his goal all along is to achieve
not NATO, Leonard.
disarmament of Hezbollah.
NATO has its own leader.
Once and for all. But as we know
His name
from
is
previous conflicts
Mark
where
Root.
they've tried to defeat Hezbollah militarily, despite claims that Hezbollah has been defeated, they have remained a potent force. And according to the army, all previous attempts to bomb Hezbollah, to disarm, haven't worked, suggesting that maybe it could be time to look for other avenues. Sammy?
And that's Rob McBride from Amman in Jordan. Kuwait has blamed Iran and its allies for attacking vital facilities in the country. Earlier on Thursday,
thanks for showing up, Leonard.
State news agency said a National Guard site was targeted by drones. The Kuwaiti Foreign Ministry has called it a violation of its sovereignty and airspace. Let's bring in Rasul Sardai, is in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. So how much damage has the Gulf seen?
Well, indeed, it was huge throughout the last 6 weeks, but today relatively was calm with the exception of Kuwait. So the Kuwait authorities are saying that the country has been attacked by the drones launched by Iran and its proxy. So now they're clearly accusing Iran of violating the ceasefire and also
Israel's violating it.
Proxies in Iraq. However, having said that, so the IRGC has just released a statement saying that since the ceasefire, they have not fired any drones or rockets or missiles on the GCC. But yesterday we have seen across the GCC country, these 5 out of 6 have reported attacks. But today it's only Kuwait, and they are accusing Iran of attacking Kuwait. While that is happening, so now that the attacks are largely stopped, Sami, so the Saudi authorities have released an assessment of the damage that was caused by the attacks since the beginning of the war from Iran, and is saying that the critical facilities, oil, gas, refining, petrochemical, and electricity facilities in Riyadh, in Eastern Province, and in Yanbu, the western industrial hub of Saudi Arabia, have been attacked, and they have caused casualties, operational disruptions, and major production losses. 1 Saudi citizen was killed and 7 others were injured. And among these critical infrastructure, the most significant ones are the East-West pipeline, and that has been built 40 years ago, indeed, on daily basis. So it was carrying around 2 million barrels of oil from the east of the country to the west, to the Red Sea, and then to the global market. But now Saudi authorities are saying that as a result of these attacks, so there has been a 700,000 barrels of oil per day reduction. as a result of these attacks and the damage that was
Be great
caused.
for oil
and also
prices.
Manifa and Khurais fields, also according
The
to
prices
Saudi
we pay at the
officials, have
pump.
been attacked. And these attacks have disrupted the flow of the energy, the oil over there, and the daily output was reduced by 600,000 barrels per day.
What's up,
so
Robbie?
overall, we're talking about
Yeah, so were Trump's words.
1.3
So
barrels of oil per day, and that is
take your
quite
pick.
significant, Sami. So now this is the Saudi assessment, and perhaps in the coming days, the similar statements and the assessment could be released by the other GCC countries to see
Yes,
the scale
this is recent.
of the attacks and also the cause, the damage that was caused, and of course the disruption in the energy flow, and also the harm on the global trade. And that's why now, for the GCC countries, seeing the ceasefire working and eventually leading a peace settlement is vitally important.
You think, Van? You think NATO's going to attack Russia?
Well, ahead of those talks, Iran's Supreme Leader Mujtaba Khamenei said Tehran does not want war with the United States and Israel, but would protect its rights as a nation. He issued a statement read by Iranian state media. In it, he said, "We will certainly seek compensation for all the damages inflicted and the blood of the martyrs, as well as the blood money for the veterans of this war. And we will definitely advance the management of the Strait of Hormuz to a new level. We have never sought war and do not seek it now, but we will not relinquish our legitimate rights in any way." Abbas Asmani is a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. He joins us now from Tehran. So is there still an agreement, a common understanding even, of what the starting point is, what the basis for negotiations is between the US and Iran?
Sami, the ceasefire agreement seems to be very fragile because just day one we saw that there were exchange of fire as well as, the difference in the interpretation of the framework of the upcoming negotiations. As I speak, sources here quoted by Iranian media reject the reports of an Iranian delegation arriving in Pakistan for talks with the United States. The Iranian side is saying that the talks could be suspended by the time that the US is committed to the terms of the ceasefire agreement, and by the time that Israel continues the strikes in Lebanon.
Trump's already backing off his commitment to the 10-point plan.
That how difficult the upcoming talks will be.
I agree, Van. There's not going to be any agreements.
You're hearing that from the Iranian side,
yes,
that they might suspend the talks. Are you suggesting that they may not have those talks in Pakistan on Saturday? The Iranians may not show up for it. Is what you're hearing?
Sami, they did not precisely say that they will suspend the talks, but they say that up to now, it is suspended by the time that the U.S. complies with the terms of the agreement, and Israel, stops, strikes in Lebanon. So the talks can be held in Pakistan. But what Iran wants to make sure that if the U.S. wants to come to Islamabad and to talk with the Iranian delegation, they have to, push Israel to stop the strikes in Lebanon, and they insist that Lebanon has been included in the framework that was earlier discussed between the two sides.
We already have an impasse because Trump's not going to go against Bibi.
It sounds like
Bibi's his bitch, or Trump is Bibi's bitch.
On Lebanon is something of a deal breaker to the Iranian side.
Has there been an agreement for money? And have they said they're looking for money?
Been saying, Israel as a spoiler in the process, not just now, but in the previous rounds of negotiations. And, one of the major conditions that Iran proposed in the 10-point plan was that the ceasefire must have been, adopted in the whole front, including in Lebanon, because post-2024 ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, we have been seeing violations from the Israeli side. So that's why Iran this time wants to make sure that this will include Lebanon. But in addition to that, there have been also some discussions on the framework of the upcoming talks. The U.S. president, Iranian side, initially they said that the 10-point plan
Where are you
provided
hearing
by
that, Van?
Iran can be a
You have a source for
workable
that I can look it up?
framework for those discussions. And but so far, the Lebanon issue seems to be the most important sticking point, as we are expecting to see if the talks in Islamabad will convene or not.
There may be other stumbling blocks they're heading towards when you look at the latest posts on social media by the US President Donald Trump, because he's posted a series of warnings to Iran, writing on Truth Social.
What do you want to sit down, man?
There are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now. In a second,
he just told Jonathan Karl from ABC News yesterday that he was all for it and he was going to go into business with them and take a cut.
With or without the help of Iran. Now, Abbas, when you compare that to what we've heard from Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei about how
Trump's insane and full of shit.
There will be a new phase, he's calling it, for managing the Strait of Hormuz. Are the two sides, the US and Iran, heading towards a dead end or a stumbling block on that issue?
On the issue of the nuclear weapons, I think that both sides can see eye to eye, but on Strait of Hormuz, the remarks by the American president has been somehow conflicting. Earlier, he didn't seem to be opposing this Iranian position. This was also among the major conditions put
that's what dementia does to you.
But as you said, the Iranian leader is saying that the management of the Strait of Hormuz is entering into a new phase, and Iran believes that there is a geopolitical reset for the strait, and this cannot return to the status quo. This seems to be one of the most important issues that Iran insists that needs to remain in place, because Tehran assumes that this is a leverage that could be used now and in future.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Don't forget to like and subscribe, buddy.
Reconstruct the country.
I wish I had a basement to sit in.
And we have to. This was also in the 10-point plan, which the U.S. president assumed as a workable framework. But we have to be waiting to see how discussions unfold in Islamabad and what they say in details in this. On this topic.
All right, and coming back to the Lebanon track, it's been reported today the Israeli Prime Minister said he wants talks with Lebanon. It's been suggested that could lead to something of a quietening, if not a ceasefire, on the Lebanese front. But would Iran accept a situation in which it goes to talks in Pakistan, but is told, we're not talking about Lebanon. That's being
I agree, Cyrus. Right now, anyway.
Between Israel and Lebanon directly. Would that be a loss of influence, leverage for Iran if it cannot link its ceasefire to a ceasefire in Lebanon and demonstrate that it has the ability to impose its will as far away as in Lebanon too?
Well, you're making the assumption that Israel is going to negotiate in good faith, and this is going to go anywhere.
To hold negotiations with other parties, including with Israel, that's up to them. I think Iran will not interfere in this issue. But in terms of, attacks against Lebanon or on Hezbollah, Iran wants to make sure that this will stop. Tehran has been in contact with Hezbollah ahead of the Islamabad talks. They have received the reservations, considerations, or the red lines from the Hezbollah side. And one thing which is important is that Israel has been trying to adopt a model toward Hezbollah in the past, a few months or years, which is despite 2024, ceasefire, they have been attacking several times Lebanon, and they want to keep this model toward the region anytime they come to anywhere and to kill or target any location or kill any person. So that's why it's important for Hezbollah as well as Iran to stop this
Thanks, Jeffrey.
and this cycle. So
welcome, John.
This is, in a bigger picture, not just limited to Lebanon, but could be adopted toward region, other parts of the resistance front. And Iran does not want to see that post, agreement, Israel will attack different parts of the resistance front in future, trying to weaken, undermine the front.
Okay, Abbas Aslani, Senior Research
I agree,
Fellow at
Mike.
the Center for Middle East Strategic
This is all
Studies.
on Trump.
Thanks for joining us. Thursday marks 40 days since Israel's assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Thousands of supporters gathered in Tehran to mourn the late leader. Iranian officials say at least 3,000 people have been killed in US-Israeli strikes. Tawhid Asadi reports from Tehran.
Here we are downtown in the Iranian capital, Tehran, in an area close to the office of the former supreme leader of the country, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which was targeted on the very first day of the campaign of airstrikes by the Americans and Israelis. On that attack, the supreme leader and several military commanders were killed. Today marks the 40th day since the killing of the supreme leader. Thousands have gathered here at this event in Tehran, and
no, Trump is not normal. He's never been normal, and he gets worse as he gets older.
Iranians, Hezbollah, and Palestinian flags, many dressed in black, a symbol of mourning. Chants against the U.S. and Israel fill the air. Emotions are high, and the messages are clear: a call for unity and a signal of solidarity.
We stand behind our leader, Sayyid Mujtaba Khamenei. It's been 40 days since we lost our Imam, but his successor is Mujtaba Khamenei. Even though we have not yet seen him, he holds a place in our hearts. We have come to offer our condolences to him.
The one who lost in this war was Trump, because he failed to achieve any of the promises and goals he had set for it.
Europe absolutely helped after 9/11. NATO helped after 9/11.
The system must remain fully vigilant, considering the positive signals they are receiving from
Trump's an
people in the
idiot.
streets and from our military forces
And a blowhard
on the ground.
and a bully.
They should enter these negotiations from a position of strength.
I have a question for the negotiators. Do you think it's possible to negotiate or sit at the table with someone who repeatedly breaks their commitments? Someone whose lack of reliability has been proven time and again, not only towards Iran, but also towards Hezbollah and Lebanon, Gaza, and many other places. Twice when we came to negotiations, we were attacked.
Does Trump care about Gaza?
This comes on the second day
Wants
of
to build a
ceasefire
resort
in
there.
a fragile situation following weeks
Because he's a
of
pig.
war. It also coincides with the anticipated talks between Iran and the United States, expected to take place in Islamabad soon. The coming days will be critical in determining whether a ceasefire can hold. But however it goes, the public mood here is that of defiance and resilience. Tawhid Asadi, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
Ambassadors from
Welcome,
more than
Leah.
80 countries have signed a statement condemning recent attacks on UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. They're calling for the perpetrators to be held to account. It comes as Israel increases attacks across Lebanon, putting peacekeepers at further risk. Al Jazeera's Gabriel Elizondo reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
More than 65 countries signed on
Yep,
to the
and Trump and
joint
his cronies
statement
make money off this
condemning
war.
the attacks against
Off the
UN
market
peacekeepers in
manipulation and
Lebanon.
everything else.
In recent weeks, 3 Indonesian peacekeepers have been killed, while others from Nepal, Ghana, France, and Poland
I saw that,
have
Leonard.
been seriously injured. And with Israel's attacks on Lebanon continuing, the danger to the peacekeepers is increasing.
We express deep concerns over the humanitarian situation in Lebanon, especially the significant civilian casualties, the extensive destruction of civilian infrastructure, and the mass displacement of more than 1 million people. We call for a
Trump keeps changing his mind, Georgia.
in Lebanon,
Wants them, doesn't need them,
of tension,
wants them.
and for all parties to return to the negotiating table.
According to the initial findings from a UN investigation, one of the fatal incidents was caused by a projectile fired from an Israeli tank, while the other fatal incident was likely caused by an improvised explosive device, likely laid, according to the UN, by Hezbollah. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera at the United Nations in New York.
The funeral has been held in Gaza for our colleague from Al Jazeera, Mubashir, who was killed by Israel in a targeted drone strike. Mohammed Wishah was a correspondent for our sister channel. The airstrike caused the car he was traveling in to burst into flames. Our colleague Hani Mahmoud was at Mohammed Wishah's funeral in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza.
Today we're not just covering a story, we're walking in it. What you
Trump
see
is
here
all
is a
about
funeral
Trump.
procession
Always
of,
was, always will be.
Our colleague from Al Jazeera, Mubashir, who was killed in a drone strike that targeted his vehicle as of yesterday, later in the evening time, on his way to work alongside the coastal road of western Gaza City. What we're looking at here, another journalist that's being killed, another voice that being silenced by the Israeli military. Many journalists here say they feel increasingly vulnerable. They believe their work is being suppressed. That documenting reality has become a risk in itself. Being a journalist in Gaza is stepping into uncertainty. There is no clear line between danger and safety. And there's no guarantee while you go out reporting that you're coming back alive. His family and colleagues have been telling us that Muhammad was on his way to work.
Well, he's looking for a way out, Van. He never should have went there.
He became part of the story. Again, sadly, another journalist killed, another voice silenced. And since the beginning of this war, we've seen
You were, Georgia?
262 Palestinian journalists killed by the Israeli military, and close to 10 of them from the Al Jazeera network. This is the reality of Palestinian journalists, and despite what's going on, we're seeing journalists still continue their work, continue their reporting.
Russia and China are providing Iran with all sorts of intelligence and probably weapons.
His family walks beside him now, colleagues, friends, people who know him just as a journalist and as a person. Today we're burying a colleague, but his stories and the stories he was trying to tell do not end here. They will live on through those who are still here, still reporting, still trying to make the world see. Hani Mahmoud, Al Jazeera, from Deir al-Balah City, Palestine. Al Jazeera Media Network has issued a statement saying it strongly condemns the heinous crime of targeting and killing
It's absolutely wicked, Leonard.
Mohammed Wishah in a strike on the vehicle in which he was traveling in western Gaza. The network says the attack constitutes a new and flagrant violation of international laws and norms and reflects a continued systematic policy of targeting journalists and silencing the voice of truth. You're watching Al Jazeera. Time to recap the headlines now. Lebanon's president says the only solution to end the bloodshed in his country
Trump doesn't have the balls to go into Ukraine.
It comes after Israeli
He'll send
forces
JD.
killed more than 300 people.
Can't be bothered.
in Lebanon
He's too busy
on
golfing.
Wednesday. The assault on Lebanon has put a ceasefire between Iran, Israel, and the United States at risk of collapse. It's emerged as a potential sticking point ahead of Saturday's talks between the US and Iran, being hosted by Pakistan. Donald Trump has once again renewed threats to Iran. The US president is demanding Tehran stop charging oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Let's go to Washington, D.C. now for our regular segment from the U.S. Capitol. This is America, bringing you deeper insight into the debates going on there.
Yeah, Trump boxed himself in. He's got no easy way out.
This is America, and this is the former Iranian embassy in Washington, a sealed time capsule
Okay. Bye-bye,
abandoned
cynical.
since the 1979 revolution. Now, at this juncture, the U.S. and Iran are far from reestablishing diplomatic ties. But is the ceasefire and Trump's suggestion of working together with Iran meaningful steps? I'll be back later with more on that, but first, here's Anna Burns-Francis in our Washington studio.
No, it doesn't, Mike. You're good.
Thanks, Heidi.
I got rid of
Peace
him.
through strength, the
He's a
White
troll.
House says. But with only a tentative ceasefire in place, will peace be achieved through concessions or more conflict? Kimberly Halkett is at the
More
White House
conflict.
today, and Richard Gaisford is live for us at the State Department.
Unfortunately.
The most important 2 days are ahead, with negotiations between the United States and Iran due this weekend. America hasn't openly published its list of demands, but the president and his team have been keen to remind the public why the country went to war.
It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. You know, we got
you haven't stopped them.
We do. We're dealing with a much
You don't have any regime change.
Different people. And if we could do something, but they have to open it up. They have to open up the strait.
It was open.
Of Trump. I mean,
so your fat ass went there.
When Iran counteroffered the 15-point American plan with its own list
I
of
agree,
10
Van.
demands, Donald Trump said they were workable.
You can't
and
trust either
reasonable.
side
But
in
then
this.
his
You
press
can't trust
secretary
Trump. You
said
can't
the
trust the
list was
Iranians.
thrown in the garbage.
And the idea that President Trump would ever accept
This
an
war.
Iranian wish list as a deal is completely absurd.
Your
The
boss
president will
accepted
only
it
make a deal
before
that
he
serves the
unaccepted
best
it.
interest of the
So
United States of
shut the fuck
America.
up and put a
What
dick
are those
back in your
interests?
mouth.
Here's a reminder of where America and Iran lie in terms of negotiating a peace deal. Each side's conditions for ending
Yep,
the
you
war
got
have
it,
been
Mike.
broadly outlined, and while
Multiple
Washington's
times
list
they changed the
hasn't been
narrative.
exclusively published, it's clear there are major differences in demands. US media leaks suggest America is open to discussing sanctions relief, while Iran is demanding the lifting of
I
some
start my
sanctions.
stream
The US says
different
Tehran
times.
must never develop a
Every
nuclear weapon
day
and
it's
must
different.
stop the enrichment of
Today was
uranium.
6
Tehran
p.m.
reportedly demands
my
its
time,
nuclear program
Eastern
be
time.
accepted. The reopening
Tomorrow
of the
it's
Strait of
4.
Hormuz is also a key US demand. Tehran says it
And I
needs a
post my
guarantee that
schedule
Iran
on my
maintains
channel.
control
If you go to the
over
posts,
waterway.
Leonard,
The
you
US
can
also
you'll
wants
find the
Iran
schedule
to
over
end its
there.
support for the likes of Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen.
And it'll be updated
But
over the
Iran is
weekend for next
demanding
week.
The US and Israel stop the war on all fronts, including fighting against those groups which are its regional allies.
Right, Barry?
Vice
I mean, who knew?
President
You
J.D.
can't trust
Vance
Bibi?
is now the one spearheading those negotiations. For more on where the
Thank you.
talks will go, we're joined by our correspondents, Kimberly Halkett at the White House and Richard Gaisford at the State Department. Kimberly, I'll start with
I
you.
bet you
J.D.
did,
Vance
Mike.
has
Holy
been
fuck, I couldn't even
shoulder-tapped
imagine.
to lead these talks. Why?
Well, what we know from the information coming out of the White House
You're welcome,
is
Leonard.
there is a number.
Yeah, I think my schedule for next week's up there right now. And the little graphic
That the
to my
US
left here,
president believes that he
that's
has
going to
been
change. I'm going to
pivotal,
start putting my schedule right there, start next week.
shouldering some of the back channel discussions between the United States, Israel, and Iran. And so, as a result, he is the most likely person to lead this endeavor. But also, we know that this is a signal that the
Yep,
U.S.
you're right, Barry.
president
Now they're
is
going to get $2
putting
million a
an
ship.
enormous amount of importance on seeing the success of these talks. In other words, putting J.D. Vance at the helm of the delegation elevates this
The couch
and is
fucker.
a signal or gesture to Iran of the significance. We should point out some of the most significant
Trump
talks
just wants
between
him
the
out of
two
town.
nations in decades. Now, having said that, there's also a recognition of a deficit in trust between the parties. And so as a result, given the fact that the Middle East envoys Jared Kushner as well as Steve Witkoff were involved in negotiations that ultimately ended up breaking out in military conflict, there is a desire to try and reduce the lack of trust between the parties by putting someone else in charge. So there is an awareness that the former negotiators were more aligned with Israel. J.D. Vance is seen as not only being more neutral, but also having better decision-making
Well, I mean,
authority.
Mike Trump's on his last term. He can't run again. No matter how much he talks about running again, he can't run for a third term. So in 2028, that's it. He's done.
Yeah, ordinarily, Anna, you're
Unless he
right.
dies
You
first.
would expect Marco Rubio and the State Department to be right at the center of all these events. But the Secretary of State's been pretty quiet recently. We saw him yesterday here at the State Department welcoming Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, but no questions answered at all. Nothing said in front of cameras before that meeting. And what we've seen over the last
Who
few
knows,
days,
Leonard?
absolutely nothing from the Secretary of State on social media since Easter, when he talked about
He's a
Easter
joke.
and the ability of America to go into Iran and pick up those 2 pilots. So it seems to be taken out of the State Department's hands. Instead, we have J.D. Vance, as you've been talking about, heading off to lead these talks, accompanied by Steve Witkoff,
Oh, really?
who, of course, is the millionaire
Was he any
property
good?
developer friend of Donald Trump, employed directly by the White House, and Jared Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law, another millionaire, an investment banker who's working as a volunteer. So none of them answering
Yeah, volunteer.
to the State Department.
Yeah, out of the
where
kindness
you
of
might
his own
expect
heart.
there to
That's
be
what.
some
That's
sort
why
of
Jared's
diplomatic
doing it.
frenzy at the moment.
He's not
They
looking to make
may
money
well
on the
be
back
behind
end
the
here.
scenes trying to clear up
No
that
chance.
confusion that J.D. Vance has been talking about. Certainly, too, fielding calls from
really, Mike?
allies trying to get their
Sorry.
wants and needs as part of these negotiations. Problem is, if this top team isn't hearing them, Anna, you do wonder how successful these negotiations might be on behalf of those allies.
Richard Gaisford at the State Department, Kimberly Halkett at the White House. Thank you both. Well, Iran's original plan to end the war looked like it had been written by ChatGPT. At least that's what the US Vice President claimed. But as both sides head to Islamabad, key demands from either
His
party
book was written
could
by
scupper talks at
ChatGPT.
any point.
Who the fuck's he
As Phil
kidding?
Lavelle explains from the State Department.
A question a lot of people are asking this place, the State Department, what does that word, victory, actually mean? Well, there's your definition. A
I don't know.
success, triumph, or superiority achieved over an opponent. The final and complete overcoming of a challenge. But is this challenge over? Really? President Trump says it is, claiming the US has won a total and complete victory, a sentiment echoed by his defense secretary.
Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory.
It doesn't look like it.
The Iranians who
And it's Operation Epstein Fury.
Their
Get
vice
it right.
president saying this 40-day war was not merely a military victory, but a turning point in changing strategic equations in the region and the world. Fact is, this is a precarious ceasefire. US Vice President J.D. Vance called
I agree,
it
Cyrus.
a fragile truce. Both sides have their competing
Maybe he's going to keep
demands.
going.
The US with its 15-point plan, Iran responding with a 10-point version, apparently its second attempt, because
The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It
But
was
Trump just
literally
agreed
thrown
to
in
it
the garbage by
before he
President Trump
disagreed to
and
it.
his negotiating team.
And there are
He's
a lot of red
stupid.
lines here. For the US, Iran's nuclear ambitions is one of them. Iran has a stockpile of near-weapons-grade, highly
Right, Mike?
enriched uranium. And
Trump's a
weapons
stable
which Americans
genius.
were told could soon be used to attack them. Iran has always maintained it is not seeking to build a weapon, and it is for peaceful purposes.
دکترین هسته ایران یک دکترین صلح‌آمیز بوده.
Iran's nuclear doctrine has been a peaceful one, and we have always
Yeah,
sought
poor Trump.
and
Fuck
still
Trump.
seek to exercise our rights to benefit from peaceful nuclear energy.
President
Barry?
Trump now claims that stockpile would be taken
Just gotta
care
keep
of
that
if
cock
a
holster
peace deal.
shut.
Iran has a ballistic missile program, which Washington wants
Fucking phony
eliminated.
Christian bitch.
Lots of U.S. combat forces are also based in the Middle East. Iran wants them gone. Then
She's
there is
always
the
so
Strait of
shrill
Hormuz.
when she
That is
talks.
one of
Ah.
the biggest sticking points.
What's up, Allie?
20% of global oil and LNG goes through this narrow waterway, or it did, until Iran blocked it. Now Tehran's controlling who goes through and wants them to pay for the privilege. It's after cash to rebuild the damage caused by the US and Israel's bombs. Plus, there are resolutions. There
Don't
are
blame
lots
them.
against Iran, the IAEA, the UN. Iran wants them ended, along with all sanctions. The US Vice President J.D. Vance is due to be at those talks in
No, they're
Islamabad
currently winning.
representing the US, but it won't be straightforward, as Obama's Secretary of State John Kerry found out back in 2015 as he worked on the original nuclear deal, pictured deep in thought here in Vienna, contemplating America's next move. Because so much of this is about strategy, and the clock is quite literally counting down day by day as we wait to see if this pause does indeed become permanent. Phil Lavelle, Al Jazeera, at the State Department.
So, still a way to go to find common ground. Joining me today to discuss what that might look like is Victoria Taylor, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary for Iraq and Iran, and Kenneth Katzman, a former Iran analyst at the Congressional Research Service. Thank you both for joining me today. Victoria, will this ceasefire hold?
I think this is an extremely fragile ceasefire, and the way that I view it is not really as a framework for negotiations, but more of an off-ramp. Of course, within the span of one day on Tuesday, we had President Trump threatening to destroy a civilization, and then we moved very quickly to the ceasefire. I think there's a lot of complications to reaching a deal and to making this ceasefire stick. The 10 points from the Iranians have almost
Thanks,
zero
Mike.
overlap with the 15
I do my
points
best.
originally presented by the United States. So I think there's a long road ahead.
I'm not getting a huge sense of optimism from you then, Kenneth. Are you on the same page?
You're not going to get more optimism from me either. But, you know, Iran still has, the war did not really change any of Iran's positions. Iran is still insisting on being able to enrich uranium. They are still refusing to give up the stockpile of enriched 60% enriched uranium. They are now, according to their version, they're insisting the U.S. basically leave the Middle East, which is not going to happen. But there is what gives us potentially cause for optimism is there seems to be a tug of war between hardliners and more pragmatic elements in Iran. And that's what produced the ceasefire. And I'm seeing evidence of that play out.
Because I guess there's a line here, whereas it's not just the US versus Iran, it's factions within the US administration and within the Iranian leadership as well as to what you concede on and what you will give and take. Do you see, Victoria, any realistic demands from Iran that the US is
Trump's sitting
willing to
in the corner eating the crayons.
Whether we look at list 10 point number 1, 10 point number 2, any of the demands that are publicly available?
Well, I think the real cause for optimism here is that we did come back for the brink, and there was an agreement from both sides to halt what would have been a very dramatic escalation. And I think that's a reflection of domestic political realities in the United States. And I think also a reflection of the fact that for both Iran and the United States, escalating the conflict is unlikely to produce a better outcome for either side. In terms of what either side can accept, you know, I think there were negotiations that have occurred throughout the course of this past year on the nuclear program. There may be some common ground that could be found there. What will be harder is the insistence of Iran to maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz,
We
which
love
is a real
going there.
non-starter, not only for the United States, but the countries in the Gulf and many other countries around the world. And I think also the idea that the United States would suddenly withdraw all of its military forces from the Middle East is not something the U.S. would ever consider.
Which presumably, Kenneth, Iran knows, right?
Well, they know, but they feel they're in a strong position because they were able to restrict traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. They feel they have Mr. Trump on the run. But I think what I argued last time when I was here was they may be underestimating Mr. Trump's resolve. Yes, the polls show we shouldn't escalate. Yes, the American people were perhaps against this operation, but I would not underestimate his potential to escalate. He does not want to appear to have caved in or be a loser or have
because that's what a bully does.
In this operation, and I think there is
he can't admit he was wrong,
will
ever.
escalate if he feels he needs to.
Because he's an egomaniac and a narcissist.
That sounds like some uncertainty from Kenneth. What are the unknowns about these talks? What specifically should we be
Putin is
looking
watching,
at?
Van?
What does
My
that
stream?
mean and where
That'd be
does
awesome.
this go?
Well, I think the primary challenge right now, of course, is Lebanon. Is Lebanon part of the ceasefire? Is it not part of the ceasefire? Does the Israeli agreement to negotiate actually help de-escalate what appears to be another front of this conflict? I think another thing that we need to be looking at is whether Iran agrees to negotiate on some of the issues
that he
that
lied to him to get him in the war.
priorities for multiple U.S. administrations.
Probably complimented him a little bit.
The Iranian possession and use of ballistic missiles, Iran's support to the proxies throughout the region. And those are issues Iran has never agreed could be part of any negotiation.
Iran has agreed to come back to the table, perhaps in some respect here because there is a change in the negotiating team. How important, Kenneth, is it that J.D. Vance is spearheading these talks?
Well, I'm not sure that's necessarily material, but I think, you know, since...
Why not? Because it is a change.
Well, it's a change. I mean, he's sort of leading, but Witkoff and Kushner are still there. But what I think we're underestimating the degree to which Iran was shaken up by that rescue mission last weekend. That was a big humiliation for Iran. The United States basically set up an air base 40 miles outside their second most important city. And they not only couldn't prevent it, they didn't even know about it. And that was, I think, a big shock.
And it was still a disaster for us.
To the table. And I think they may be mistaken if they think Mr. Trump will not use ground intervention if he feels he needs to.
Yeah, okay, although that would be a huge step. And the president clearly feels a new strategy is needed. when it comes to getting a deal done.
The deal, right? How's that moving? Is it okay? The big deal? You see it happening? So if it doesn't happen, I'm blaming J.D. Vance. If it does happen, I'm taking full credit. No, I think it'll be, I think it has to happen. I think they're desperate.
Perhaps in jest, but has J.D. Vance been given a bit of a hospital pass in terms of trying to actually negotiate a realistic outcome here, Victoria?
I mean, I think it's a very difficult deal, and it was a difficult deal to achieve even ahead of the war. I don't think the terms for the United States dramatically improved, even though the U.S. and Israel can really claim significant military victories. But I would say, you know, the inclusion of J.D. Vance as part of the negotiating team is significant. And I think it's an important signal, not only for the United States to send to the vice president, but it's something probably the Iranians also welcome. J.D. Vance is known not to be supportive of, you know, a very assertive U.S. military role. Reporting suggests he was not particularly in favor of this war.
Yeah, there's probably not going to be a deal
for the
then.
Iranians, his inclusion also sends a signal that the U.S. is actually trying to achieve a diplomatic deal.
Kenneth, that reporting about J.D. Vance's position has gone rather far and wide. It is being discussed quite openly. Is that also in some ways a message to the American public and maybe to more mainstream Republicans that this is a sense of pulling back a bit and getting things to a more neutral ground and not escalating?
In the U.S., Mike?
Well, I think
that's the two main parties. I mean, you know, there's a lot of registered independents. I'm a registered independent. There's a Libertarian Party. You know, there's other smaller parties, but
particularly in Latin America,
Democrats and Republicans dominate everything.
I think he's much more viewed as perhaps willing to see the benefits of escalation. Vance obviously has been against getting into a quagmire, more appealing much more to the MAGA base of no long wars, no regime change wars, and so that is sending a signal that he might soften the U.S. positions on some points.
Well, J.D. Vance has said that if the Strait of Hormuz isn't reopened, then President Trump will not abide by the terms of the ceasefire.
What the president has also shown is that we still have clear military, diplomatic, and maybe most importantly, we have extraordinary economic leverage. So the president told us not to use those tools. He's told us to come to the negotiating table. But if the Iranians don't do the exact same thing, they're going to find out that the president of the United States is not one to mess around.
Very little.
I'll come back to you there because
very
we were
little,
just
Mike.
discussing it. What do you make of
They could pull
that
some
breakdown?
votes,
Because
and they
obviously all
do.
those things he listed are tools that you do use in the
You know,
negotiations
they can tip elections.
Well, I think that comment
one way or the
about,
other.
you know, do not mess around. Mr. Trump does not mess around. I think Iran would be wise to listen to that advice. And, you know, I think Mr. Trump is speaking tonight. He may
Vance is
more
weak.
US
He has no
troops going
balls.
to the region. You know, that would be within his style to ratchet up the pressure as talks are about to begin.
The problem is still the Strait, though, isn't it, Victoria?
Yeah, I think the Strait remains an extremely vexing challenge and one that cannot be solved militarily with great ease. And so I think that's why we also come to a scenario where ultimately in his speech last week, President Trump was basically suggesting that reopening the Straits was not the U.S. problem. And in fact, it was a challenge to be solved by other countries that were more reliant upon it.
Yeah, it has been a mixed message at times. Donald Trump's decision, though,
I
to
don't know, man.
de-escalate the war with Iran has U.S. media questioning his strategy.
Thanks,
and
Jeffrey.
How he brought
You're
Iran
still here?
to the table. Was it threats or did he run out of
Have you
options?
subscribed yet?
Joe Castro's been canvassing reaction.
I was a
The
Republican
US
for almost
media
30
is
years,
not
Jeffrey.
buying Trump's claims of total
Hardcore
and complete
right-wing
victory
Republican.
over Iran.
Newt
Not on the
Gingrich
left,
loving
nor on
Republican.
the right. In fact, almost across the board, they're pointing out the uncertainty of this ceasefire. We'll start with the left-leaning MS Now, which featured this panel discussion shortly after the ceasefire was announced. This is a
You're welcome, Mike.
retired
Yeah,
four-star
I'll do
Army
my best to
general
answer
who did
any
not
questions
mince
you got.
words on his assessment of Trump.
He is unhinged and incoherent and dangerous. And that whole notion of ending a civilization, which couldn't be done, it was sort of a drama queen kind of pronouncement.
The Washington Post
Trump's a
ran
drama
this
queen.
headline.
I love
Trump's
it.
apocalyptic threat paused war, but fueled debate about his credibility. It goes on
Yes,
to report
Robbie.
the president's ultimatum
Rhino.
drew
Yeah.
condemnation across
Registered
the political
independent, buddy.
spectrum and intensified open debate about his credibility, morality, and sanity.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
PBS, that's
I'm
the
respectful
public
of you guys too.
broadcasting service,
I
says
try to be
much
anyway.
remains unclear after the U.S., Israel, and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. That uncertainty also highlighted by the right-leaning Newsmax, also tempered with some praise. This is Kurt Volker, the
I agree.
former
I don't
US
think NATO
ambassador
should
to
help.
NATO.
Let's all be grateful that President Trump did not try
Yeah,
to
Barry
eliminate
McCaffrey.
civilization.
That's who
I
that
think he
guy
made the right
was.
call. We don't need to go down that road. We need to find a solution. Second, I'm very glad to see that it appears the Iranians have agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
And that last bit was said while the Strait of Hormuz appeared to be open. Its current status has since shifted. Just further evidence of the lack of clarity and fragility of the ceasefire.
Thanks, Lunatic. Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Look back and say, well, we can be glad that things didn't happen, but as PBS said, much remains unclear. What kind of uncertainty what issue does this uncertainty
That's not going to happen, Mike.
for the rest of
Everything
the world?
is very divided here.
It causes a lot of uncertainty.
Very
but, I think
divided.
there was a lot, whether his comment about civilization is to be taken literally or not, there was a lot of unrest even on the Republican side about.
Well, then he tried to give an
civilian
ultimatum,
targets like power plants,
threatened to destroy
like
their entire
bridges.
civilization,
There was
and
a
then he
lot of
tacoed again.
rejection of
Because
that
that's what he does.
strategy. But the problem is the president ran out of ways to escalate other than introducing ground troops, which he doesn't want to
Sasa,
do. So
what's
he
up?
had to find other ways to escalate. And so he threatened these
Turkey?
civilian targets.
Why would we
which
attack
was
Turkey next?
Likely a mistake, because that will alienate the very Iranian people we expect to
Am I
support
missing
us,
something?
and who have supported the United States.
NATO head Mark Rutte has been in Washington, D.C., offering alliance help with the conflict, sort of.
If NATO can help, obviously NATO is there. There's no reason not to be helpful. Obviously we will.
There's your boy, Mike.
If that is helpful, but I think we have to do it step by step, because also in NATO that requires then an agreement between all the allies to do that. And I think here the exact structure is less important than the speed.
I'll get to that last line in a minute about structure being less important than speed, Victoria, but gosh, that was a bit of a token offer, wasn't it? If it's helpful or if it's useful, is NATO
I can't speak for Israel, Sasa,
Well, I think
but
Mark Rutte is
the U.S.
walking an
Trump can't pull us out of
extremely
NATO.
careful line here. Of
It
course,
requires
the
Congress to
president
pull us out of NATO.
issued a lot of threats
And
about
he's
NATO.
not-
with
he's
a
not
lot
gonna
of
get
people
that.
questioning his
So.
commitment to remain in NATO, and so it's to the benefit of the Secretary General to be as open as possible to the possibility.
I hear you, Mike.
However, we've also seen very strong statements from other European countries.
It's funny how all
many of
politicians
whom
do
have been
that,
highly
right?
critical
Screw
of
over the
US
little guy.
decision to enter this war, and it would be quite difficult not
hear
only
you, Al.
for NATO to take a firm role in reopening the straits, but also to navigate the politics within the alliance with the other European countries.
Kenneth, I'll come to you for some final thoughts there. On the Strait of Hormuz, it is obviously one of the conditions of the ceasefire agreement. Mark Rutte there saying the exact structure of reopening would be less important than speed. What is going to happen? Will that reopen within the next 2 weeks?
Well, I think Mr. Trump feels it has to. I mean, how can he go to the American people and say this was a wise idea if it leaves the Strait of Hormuz closed? He can't argue that.
He didn't get anything out of
again,
this
as I
so
said,
far.
He does not want to
Nothing.
be seen as having been blundered. And so I think, he's going to have to reopen it one way or the other, and that may involve some violence, unfortunately.
All right. Kenneth Katzman, Victoria Taylor, thank you both for joining me today. Well, the ceasefire between the US and Iran has been picked apart online, with attacks across Lebanon now dominating the discussion. The American public worried the agreement could already be coming undone. Alex Baird has been following the debate.
Well, it all started with news of a ceasefire, and now this.
Good for you, Mike.
Lebanon
Good for you.
in flames. Israeli bombs killing hundreds of civilians. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy saying it's hard to believe that a rushed agreement doesn't seem to be holding. Former Republican strategist Rick Wilson laying it all at the feet of
I
Trump.
agree, Peach Creek.
Trump has this up so left, right, and sideways. He has no
Rick Wilson.
idea how to escape the trap he's put America in.
Iran's prime minister saying those Israeli attacks in Lebanon violate the ceasefire, rendering negotiations meaningless. Pezeshkian reminding the states that Iran's hands are still on the trigger. Vice President J.D. Vance responding, well, if you want to let this all fall apart over Lebanon...
That's ultimately their choice. We think that would be dumb, but that's their choice.
Some saying the White House would rather let Iran close Hormuz again than let Israel stop its killing. One of the hosts of the independent political podcast,
So
Breaking
stupid.
Point, saying, what does it say about
So all
the
of us
US
pay
that
more
we're
for
willing
everything
to blow up the global economy over Israel's desire to ethically
instead of
cleanse
putting
and
our
annex
boot
half
on Bibi's
of
neck, making him stop his
the Israeli
bullshit.
Prime Minister going viral for multiple comments. This one, that the war will continue at any time he chooses.
We are ready to resume the fighting at any moment. Our finger is on the trigger.
Bernie
This
Sanders
war criminal.
unsurprised and pushing back. We cannot allow Israel to continue shaping US military and foreign policy. Far-right political activist Laura Loomer has the air of the president, and she sees this all differently, saying Iran is now more legitimized and emboldened than ever before. They cannot be negotiated with, only
You got it, Sasa.
destroyed. Destruction that the president says he's ready to resume if need be, bigger, better, and stronger. For Trump, America is back.
Oh, we're back, all right. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
all from the team here in Washington, D.C. On This Is America, we'll keep following the decisions that shape the U.S.
All right, guys, stick around. We're going to go another hour.
If you want to catch up on this episode,
Maybe
check
two.
out our YouTube,
See how it goes.
aljazeera.com. That's all for now. We'll
All
head
right.
back to the team
I'll be right
in
back.
Doha. Thanks for watching.
Welcome to Al Jazeera's extensive coverage of the ceasefire in the war between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. I'm Riley Carlson. Here's what's coming up. Israel says it will hold direct negotiations with Lebanon. The government in Beirut insists a ceasefire needs to come first. The diplomatic push comes after massive Israeli strikes devastated Lebanese cities. 303 people were killed and more than 1,000 wounded. The assault has put a ceasefire between Iran, Israel, and the United States at the risk of collapse. Leaders from Washington and Tehran will hold talks on Saturday. Friends and family members bid farewell to Al Jazeera journalist Mohammed Washah, who was killed by an Israeli drone strike in Gaza. Lebanon's president says the only solution to end the bloodshed in his country is a ceasefire with Israel. Joseph Aoun says a truce could be followed by direct negotiations with Israeli officials. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has asked his cabinet to open direct talks with the Lebanese government, but he insists disarmament of Hezbollah must be part of those negotiations. Hezbollah has rejected any talks. The assault on Lebanon has put a ceasefire between Iran and the United States at risk of collapse ahead of talks that are set to be hosted in Pakistan. It comes after Israeli forces killed more than 300 people in Lebanon on Wednesday.
Thanks, Mike.
when they
You're
launched
designing
over
electronics?
100
What kind of
strikes
electronics
in
do you
just 10
design, man?
minutes. They were the bloodiest attacks in the country since the U.S. and Israel's war with Iran began. Israel maintains it is targeting Hezbollah military sites. The Lebanese Health Ministry says more than 1,800 people have been killed in total since February the 28th. Rob McBride is following developments out of Israel from the Jordanian capital of Amman. But first, let's bring in Heidi Pett, who is live for us in Beirut. Heidi, it's worth noting that the Lebanese government asked to open talks weeks ago, but will it agree to these talks without any ceasefire?
I mean, the short answer to that, Riley, is no. So yes, well, you're right. The Lebanese government signaled an openness to direct talks with Israel many weeks ago, and it seems the sticking point there was Israel's unwillingness to engage. We're now seeing that the Israeli Prime Minister is signaling an openness to those talks. But the Lebanese President, Joseph Aoun, stated today that nothing could happen without an immediate ceasefire here in Lebanon. And then potentially those talks, which will reportedly take place in Washington, could proceed. The other thing that he stressed today was that Lebanese should have faith in the state here, that he wouldn't tolerate any kind of internal strife. We also had the Prime Minister of Lebanon speaking after a cabinet meeting today.
Nice.
Now, he made two significant announcements. Noaf Salam said that Lebanon would be launching a formal complaint to the Security Council
You're pretty handy, Mike.
about Israel's
Charisse.
attacks here in Lebanon on Wednesday.
What's going
which
on?
Killed. At the moment, the toll is 303 people, with more than 1,000.
My financial advisor is in the chat.
That he committed to was disarming Hezbollah within the Beirut governorate. Now, this has been a key condition of Israel for these talks, but it has been an aim of the Lebanese government for some time. They were aiming, in fact, to disarm Hezbollah by the end of last year. Now, that deadline passed without implementation, and part of the reason for that is there is a fear here that if the Lebanese army goes into these areas and starts disarming Hezbollah, that it could lead to conflict or indeed direct confrontation with the group. And so the implementation has been incredibly difficult. You know, we had the Lebanese Prime Minister declaring Hezbollah's military and security activities to be illegal very shortly after.
No, Charisse, I sold out of my position.
Back in March, and
Thank
nothing
you.
was done to enforce
I didn't
that.
listen to your
But
advice.
obviously the key aspect of this as well is Hezbollah, who have signaled that they are not interested in these negotiations.
I'm holding the cash.
An official from Hezbollah speaking anonymously to the New York Times in the last couple of hours, basically saying that whatever negotiations or whatever talks the government wants to make doesn't concern them.
And so, Heidi, that is the diplomatic situation right now. But what is the situation like on
Yeah,
the
you're
ground?
not getting a
Are
cut
there still
either.
strikes
What's up,
happening?
Brian?
What are you seeing and hearing right now in Beirut?
I saw Trump is attacking Alex Jones, yeah, and the rest of them.
Yes, definitely. In the last couple of hours, there's been
They're
a
all finally
continuation
realizing
of
he's
Israeli
insane.
airstrikes across Lebanon, multiple locations hit, as well as a drone strike which was targeting a vehicle. We've had the Israeli surveillance drone flying over the capital for several hours. It has, in the last hour or so, actually departed, giving people here in Beirut at least a moment's peace. But that is tinged with a great deal of uncertainty, fear and foreboding, because Israel issued new forced evacuation orders for the southern suburbs of Beirut earlier this afternoon, signaling that strikes will be incoming. And notably, they included the suburb of Jannah, where there are not only many displaced people who had departed the rest of the southern suburbs, but also two hospitals, which the World Health Organization has sounded the alarm about. They say that there are 450 patients in those
Welcome,
two
Alex.
hospitals, which they describe as operating
MAGA
at
Civil War
full
continues.
capacity, noting that
Praise
there
be
are
to
no
Allah.
alternative medical facilities available to transport them to, and that is because hospitals here across Lebanon are still trying to treat the more than 1,000 people wounded. They are still trying to count and identify the dead. And so the World Health Organization has described those evacuation orders as unimplementable. The other
No, there won't be a
significant
civil
occurrence
war.
is the continued expansion of the Israeli ground operation here in Lebanon. They have been attempting
MAGA's
to
all
encircle
talk.
the town of Bint Jbeil for about a week now. It appears that they are now entering the outskirts, and Hezbollah has
I
said
agree,
that they
Vin.
have been engaging with direct clashes with those Israeli troops. And that, of course, is a signal of a return to operations by Hezbollah, who had previously said that they had paused because their understanding was that Lebanon was included in that regional
agree,
ceasefire
Salsa.
agreement, and Israel made it very, very clear yesterday that it was not.
Heidi Pett reporting live for us on what's happening in Beirut. Heidi, thank you.
Mike, do you have all
Prime
this
Minister
equipment
Benjamin Netanyahu
at home
says
for
there is
yourself?
no ceasefire in Lebanon,
You have a
and that
3D
Israel
printer?
will continue to target Hezbollah with full force.
Following repeated appeals from the Lebanese government to enter into peace negotiations with us, last night I instructed the cabinet to open direct negotiations with Lebanon in order to achieve two goals. One, the disarmament of Hezbollah. Two, a historic, sustainable peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon.
Rob McBride is following the Israeli government's reaction from the Jordanian capital of Amman. Rob, Heidi was reporting that Lebanon's government does not want to negotiate without
Yes, they
a
are,
ceasefire
Van.
in place. Is there any indication from Israel that it will stop strikes in order to open those channels of
4
communication?
3D printers. Holy crap. Is that for your business, or is this just all personal stuff?
The position of Israel remains the same. No, there
Hey,
will
you
be
are a
no
lunatic.
let-up in the strikes against Hezbollah that they regard as much of a threat as Iran itself, and indeed a threat that's probably, for many in Israel, much closer to home, with maybe around 1.5 million people in northern Israel coming under the direct threat of Hezbollah rocket attacks across the border. A number of them. Well, that's right. I mean, I think
you got
the
more
feeling
energy
is
than me,
here
Mike.
That Israel is being pushed or bullied into this by the United States. There is an awareness, obviously, that the continued ceasefire is extremely important for the U.S.
Right,
and
Sasa?
Donald Trump to maintain the Strait of Hormuz, keeping it open at all costs. And they don't want to see anything jeopardizing that ceasefire. So Netanyahu is seen as coming under incredible pressure to try to low-key it, as Trump apparently said in a phone conversation with Netanyahu on Wednesday, basically scaling back these attacks into Lebanon to try to create the kind of atmosphere that allows talks to would take place, also not to jeopardize the all-important agreement between the US and Iran. As far as Netanyahu is concerned, he is prepared to go ahead with talks, but as long as it leads ultimately to the goal of Hezbollah finally.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine $11 a gallon gas here.
For us from Amman, Jordan. Rob, thank you.
Insane.
Kuwait has blamed Iran and its
Everybody be
allies
broke.
for
The
attacking
economy
vital
just
facilities in the
stop.
country. Earlier on Thursday, Kuwait state news agency said a National Guard site was
Yeah, people
targeted
suck,
by
Mike.
drones.
I agree.
The Kuwaiti foreign ministry
Human interaction
has
is
called it a
overrated.
violation of its sovereignty and airspace. Let's bring in Rasul Sardar now, who joins us live from the Saudi Arabian capital of Riyadh. Rasul, what more do we know about these strikes in Kuwait?
So today, I mean, on Tuesday, it was a relatively calm day across the GCC country, with the exception of Kuwait. So on Thursday evening, so the Kuwaiti authorities saying that Iran and its allies, including the armed factions across the region, so perhaps I think that is the Iraqi armed groups that are affiliated with Iran, have targeted the critical facilities in Kuwait by drones, and of course they're saying that
Really,
Iran
man,
is
what was he
violating
saying?
The ceasefire. That is quite significant, because almost like at the same hours, there was another statement from the IRGC
Hey, you got it,
of
Mike.
Iran saying that since the beginning of the ceasefire, we have not fired any projectiles toward the GCC countries. So there is a contradiction over here. However, while saying that, for the rest of the GCC countries, it was a relatively calm day, and now we're seeing.
I hear you, Scott.
statements coming
Yeah,
out
he doesn't
regarding
care
the
about
damage
fucking the American people.
assessment. And one of the rare case is Saudi Arabia, because this kind of reports are extremely scarce in Saudi Arabia. And so now the Ministry of Energy has released,
I'm sure some citizens do, yeah.
a damage assessment and listing the facilities that have been
Maybe if we
hit
stop
or
bombing
damaged
schools
by the
and killing their
Iranian
children,
projectiles.
maybe more of them will
They're
support
saying
us.
that the gas field, the electricity centers, the petrochemicals, and so on.
That's part of the
In
problem,
total,
Sas.
They're talking about 1.3 million barrels of oil being reduced from the market. That makes it daily $127 million and monthly nearly $4 billion of the loss. So this is quite significant. And in the coming days, perhaps the other
Democrats
GCC
don't hate
countries are also
America.
going to follow the same example.
Stop.
And release that kind of
Stop being a
statements
troll
and
or a
assessments
bot
to
from
see
India.
the scale of the damage that was caused by this war.
And
Isn't that funny,
Rasul,
Charisse?
What is the GCC saying about these upcoming
It's
talks
weird,
in
right?
Pakistan?
I
and
mean,
what they're
Trump
hoping to see
publicly
come
came
out of
out and said that there are sleeper cells here and we know where they're
GCC
at.
countries, they're not directly
Yet he didn't
at
go
the
after 'em.
negotiating table now. It is
If you knew where they
Iranians and
were
American
before the war, why
delegations
didn't you
that
go
are
after them before the
negotiating
war
in
to make sure that we don't have to worry
Islamabad?
about terrorist
GCC
attacks?
countries are not there directly.
Maybe he's full of
However,
shit.
on
I mean, I find it hard to
daily
believe
basis,
Trump would
phone
lie
calls
about
between
anything,
the
but,
officials.
you know,
So
it can
on
happen, I
Thursday,
guess.
The Qatari foreign
I mean, he is the greatest
leader,
president that ever
was on a
lived.
phone call with the Pakistani Prime Minister, Shahbaz Sharif, and then the King of Bahrain again, and the day before it was Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan. I'm talking to Shahbaz Sharif of
Don't call me weird.
Pakistan, and then the Kuwaiti Foreign Minister. So what we are seeing is that the GCC countries are communicating their demands through the phone calls as of now, with the direct engagement with the
That's what they say, Sasa.
Pakistanis here
That's what they said in their Lego video,
mediators.
which was hilarious.
However, when it comes to their demands, they are quite clear. So they have three demands. First, no change in the status of the Strait of Hormuz, because Iran is saying...
Mike, I'm going to make you go bye-bye. Stop.
Keep its control over the Strait of Hormuz.
I know what you're saying, Charisse. I was breaking your balls.
Vessels. And so GCC countries are saying Strait of Hormuz is an international waterway and is under
Okay, Mike's going bye-bye.
the guarantees of the international conventions, so they are not going to accept any change. And of course, they want Iran missile program not to remain as a threat to the GCC, and also Iranian proxies to stop their attack
They are crazy.
on the GCC countries, and in the future not to destabilize the region.
It is.
Rasul Sardar reporting live for us from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia.
I mean, everybody
Rasul,
knows
thank
it's
you.
propaganda, right?
Ahead of those
But
talks that
it's still
Rasul was just
hilarious.
speaking about, Iran's Supreme
And
Leader
somewhat
Moshtaba
truthful.
Khamenei says that Tehran does not want war with the United States and Israel, but that it would protect its rights as a nation. He issued a statement read by Iranian state media that says, "We will certainly seek compensation for all the damages inflicted and the blood of the martyrs, as well as the
Not
blood
you,
money
Mike, the
for
other
the
Mike
veterans of this
that
war,
popped in.
and we will
He's running his
definitely
mouth.
advance the management of the Strait of Hormuz to a new level. We have never sought war,
Right?
and
We
do
live
not
in the
seek it
future,
now,
Charisse.
but we will not relinquish our legitimate rights in any way." We've also heard from the U.S. President Donald Trump, who has issued a series of warnings to Iran. Writing on Truth Social, he said, "There are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better
Who's
stop
dead?
now."
Trump?
In a second
I
post,
wish.
Trump said Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. He wrote, "You'll see oil start flowing with or without the help of Iran."
I think they've got minerals
Alex
and
Vitenka
stuff
is a senior
in
fellow
Greenland
at the Middle East Institute
that Musk
and the author
wants
of the
and other
book, The
people
Battle
want.
of the Ayatollahs in Iran.
It's all about the
The
grift.
United States foreign policy and policy rivalry. And he
Everything
joins us
Trump
now from
does is about
Washington,
the
DC.
grift.
Alex, it's good to have you back with us. Thanks for being here. The
Oh.
president also posted
Yeah, the
one
old
more
guy.
thing on
I don't know about
Truth
if his
Social,
son is
and
dead.
He said Iran is doing a very
I heard he
poor
was
job,
wounded last
dishonorable,
I
some
heard.
would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz.
If
That
Trump
is
doesn't
not
know
the
anything.
agreement we have. It's hard to know, though, Alex, what is the agreement at this point? We have some idea of the demands that each side had put forward, but do we have any idea what they're actually agreeing to going into these talks?
Riley, it's great to be back with you. Look, I think absolutely you're right. That basic framework for negotiations is still not really determined. We have a set of bullet points that each side have put out there. I mean, the last one, obviously, is President Trump has said he's
national
happy
security,
to work what
yeah.
the Iranians have put out there, the 10 points. And again, if you look at the 10 points, some of those demands by Iran, I think, are non-starters for the United States, including this idea of U.S. military forces having to leave the region. But there's actually plenty of space for negotiations that might take us somewhere positive if you focus on the core issues that we know for years now have been the main, area of concern and controversy between the two countries, namely the nuclear program. There you potentially have what you need for a deal. Added to this, obviously,
Yeah, that's
is
right.
what
We've
the
had
war has
bases there
created,
forever.
This new sense of urgency around the Strait of Hormuz. Again,
Trump's
on the
just
Iranian
insane.
side, you have this idea of we have to
And a
control
grifter.
it, but I'm betting if they get a deal elsewhere on other issues that Iran cares about, I can't see the Iranians insisting on ownership of the Strait of Hormuz. It's going to be very difficult
Yep.
for them to pull that one off.
Why not, though, Alex, given that the Supreme Leader in this statement has said that they will be looking to seek
You
compensation?
think, Van? You think China's going to take
Is it
over
likely
everything?
that they'll get it from somewhere else besides maybe taking some sort of monetary control of the strait?
You know, what the Iranians are essentially asking for is a return to the global economy. They want to be a normal country. That's what they're saying for in their 10 bullet points, Riley. They're talking about removal of primary American sanctions, which basically means they're open
As the
to idea of
economic
American investment in
superpower,
Iran.
Sasa? Maybe.
As crazy that might sound right now, that's something they've talked about in the past. They're talking about removal of secondary sanctions. That's the, other countries other than the United States being able to go and invest and trade with the Iranians freely. So if you're Iran, you have a lot more to gain from becoming a normal country than remaining ostracized and playing the Strait of Hormuz as a card and as a source of revenue.
They are
yes,
prepared.
You can get maybe up to $100 billion a year by essentially blackmailing the global economy, but that doesn't make you normal. That comes with all sorts of bad things with it. So I don't know which way the Iranians are going to go, but in the big picture, if they can get a deal, and I'm being very optimistic because it's a huge, lift here, but if they could do that, then the Strait of Hormuz should really be a secondary issue for them.
I want to ask you then, Alex, about Lebanon. Given that this seems to be right now one of the sticking points in these negotiations going forward, do you think it may be the thing that makes Iran walk away from these negotiations before it even starts?
It could, Riley, but if it walks away, it would be a temporary walk away. I won't be necessarily, they might delay the talks in Islamabad. I can't see this issue essentially killing all hope for diplomacy between U.S. and Iran, because fundamentally both sides want diplomacy to work, because both sides have discovered the hard way that if diplomacy doesn't work, the alternative is that much worse. And remember, Riley, Hezbollah has an emotional value for the Iranians that no other of these proxies have. And Hezbollah entered this war on the side of Iran after the U.S. and Israel attack on Iran. So the Iranians feel like they owe Hezbollah and the country of Lebanon something. So they're going to try and see if they can get the Lebanese a ceasefire and stop the Israeli attacks on Lebanon. But again, there's so much Iran will be able to do. But I want to go back to a point I made, because I think fundamentally the most important thing to remember, Donald Trump wants diplomacy to work. The Iranians want diplomacy to work. It's heavy workload that they need to lift. But there is a way, if you look at the bottom line of both sides, there's a way out of this if they put their minds to it.
Alex Vatanka at the Middle East Institute, we appreciate your insight and a little bit of optimism here on Al Jazeera. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at some of the day's other news now. A funeral has been held in Gaza for our colleague from Al Jazeera, Mubashir, who was killed by Israel in a targeted drone strike. Mohammed Washah was a correspondent for our sister channel. The airstrike caused the car he was traveling in to burst into flames. Gaza's government media office says 262 journalists have been killed since Israel's war began in 2023. Our colleague Hani Mahmoud was at Mohammed Washah's funeral in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza.
Today we're not just covering a story, we're walking in it. What you see here is a funeral procession of our colleague from Al Jazeera, Mubashir, who was killed in a drone strike that targeted his vehicle as of yesterday, later in the evening time.
Well, Israel can't have reporters reporting on their war crimes, so.
Western Gaza City. What we're looking at here, another journalist that's being killed, another voice that being silenced by the Israeli military. Many journalists here say they feel increasingly vulnerable. They believe their work is being suppressed. That documenting reality has become a risk in itself. Being a journalist in Gaza is stepping into uncertainty. There is no clear line between danger and safety. And there's no guarantee while you go out reporting that you're coming back alive. His family and colleagues have been telling us that Muhammad was on his way to work. He was on his way to tell a story, but he became part of the story. Again, sadly, another journalist killed, another voice silenced. And since the beginning of this war, we've seen close to 262 Palestinian journalists killed by the Israeli military, and close to 10 of them from the Al Jazeera network. This is the reality of Palestinian journalists, and despite what's going on, we're seeing journalists still continue their work, continue their reporting, documenting Israeli atrocities across the Gaza Strip. What we're seeing here is his family walks beside him now, colleagues, friends, people who know him just as a journalist and as a person. Today we're burying a colleague, but his stories and the stories he was trying to tell do not end here. They will live on through those who are still here, still reporting, still trying to make the world see. Hani Mahmoud, Al Jazeera, from Deir al-Balah City, Palestine.
Nearly 6 months after a U.S. brokered ceasefire took effect in Gaza, there is a deepening humanitarian crisis. Shortages of flour, fuel, and other
Trump's never going to suffer consequences, Sharice, ever.
And families are forced to wait for hours at bakeries and markets just to secure basic food, while restrictions at
people under him
crossings
will
make more instability. Ibrahim Al-Khalili reports from Gaza City.
In Gaza, crowds of people outside bakeries, as Israel's restrictions on supply and fuel drive another crisis. Demand is far exceeding supply, and that's forcing residents to wait for hours just to get some loaves of bread.
I wake up early and come here, standing in line for an hour or two, just to get a 2-kilo bundle of bread. I have a family of 9. It's not enough. There's no flour, no fuel, no gas, and no gas is coming in. If gas were available, and if I still had a home, I would make bread myself. but none of that's possible.
The crisis goes beyond the production. Israel has put restrictions on replacing old currency, and it's caused a severe shortage of cash.
I'm asked to pay the exact amount in small change, but where am I supposed to get it? There is no change anywhere in Gaza. I wait in line for an hour, only to
You
be
would
turned
think
away
Hexeth would
if I
be
don't
brought
have
up on charges, Charisse.
And analysts warn that a reduction in subsidies from the World Food Program has created a major supply gap.
With the current 30% cut in bread production, we're now facing a gap of approximately 40 to 50% in the locally produced bread. There's an urgent need to increase the amount of flour entering Gaza, as well as to provide the necessary machinery, oils and fuel.
Without international support to ensure essential supplies
Thanks,
can
Scott.
enter the Strip, Gaza's bread crisis will worsen.
Well,
and
I'm
make
sure
it
he
even
helped
more
push
difficult
Trump
for
in this
families
direction,
to feed
Sasa.
themselves.
The Gaza Bakery Owners Association says the bread shortage is deepening, with only 50%
Maybe,
of the
Larson.
population's need being met, and people once again find themselves in long lines for the most basic necessities, a reality that underscores how fragile life has become. Ibrahim Al-Khalili, Al Jazeera, Gaza City, Palestine.
In Brazil, the fight for indigenous rights is shifting from the streets to the ballot box. Thousands of indigenous leaders are camped out in the capital to chart a political strategy ahead of elections in October. Monica Yanakiev reports from Brasilia.
Indigenous women on the warpath, preparing to launch their candidacies for the general elections. Among them, Sônia Guajajara, who stepped down as Brazil's first Indigenous Affairs Minister to
Right,
run
Larson?
for Congress in October.
And Trump's not going to
And
suffer
she's
any
not alone.
consequences for any
A
of this.
growing number of Indigenous leaders are entering politics.
He lit the world on fire, and he's going to walk away with more money in his
defended
pocket.
our rights as an indigenous movement.
While we all get
and now
poorer.
we're also fighting to occupy our own space in Brazilian political institutions by electing our own candidates.
The first round of general elections will be held in October. Left-wing President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is running for a fourth term. When he took office, he promised
Not really,
to protect
Charisse.
indigenous rights. 94-year-old
Yep,
tribal
he'll
leader
age out,
Raoni,
man.
who walked beside Lula during his inauguration ceremony, also made an appearance at the gathering, arriving in a wheelchair.
A lot of guns in
He
this
urged
country.
young
You are
voters to
correct.
unite and choose candidates who represent their causes. Polls suggest Lula is neck and neck with right-wing candidate Flávio Bolsonaro, a senator and son of former President Jair Bolsonaro. Raoni says he's urging the 6,000 indigenous activists who have converged here in the capital to defend their rights and support Lula again. As well as
If
the
he lives that
president,
long,
governors,
Sasa.
and mayors, Brazilians will also be voting for
Of course he'll
federal,
deny
state,
involvement.
and municipal representatives.
Indigenous leaders at this campout have been telling us that the greatest threat they face comes from Brazil's conservative-led Congress. In recent years,
I agree with
it
you,
has
Larson.
pushed for legislation limiting land demarcation and weakening protections for their territories.
Tribal leader Alessandra Munduruku has also fought illegal gold mining in her people's territory. Now she says she will run for Congress to stop legislation from being passed. Indigenous candidates running for state and city legislatures cite the same motivation.
Nice hat.
We have been historically left on the outside when politicians discuss issues that matter to us, like land demarcation and indigenous education and healthcare. That's why political representation matters so much.
For many here, the fight for indigenous rights is no longer just on the ground. It is moving into the halls of power. Monica Yanakiev, Al Jazeera, Brasilia.
I couldn't agree more, Larson.
In the war between
But
the US, Israel,
you know,
and
if you're
Iran
paying attention,
continues
you'll
after
notice
Inside
that Trump and
Story,
Hexeth
which looks at
are,
the role
you know,
Hezbollah
talking a lot
is
about
playing in the
God and
future
this
of
being a
that
holy
ceasefire.
war of sorts.
That's coming up next.
That's not
Stay
good.
with us.
You know, Project 2025 and
The conflict is arising
theocracy and
because of Israel's insistence on
right-wing
striking
Christian
oil
nationalism.
facilities inside Iran.
This is one
We've
of
got
the
it all
oil
now.
facilities of the country.
that has been targeted. You can see the puff of cloud once those interceptors take out those missiles and rockets and drones.
Hezbollah rockets have reached this far into Israeli territory, and Israel consider this a serious escalation.
Lebanon's government is struggling to meet the demand for emergency shelter. This stadium is being converted into a mini tent city.
Stay with Al Jazeera for the latest developments.
President Trump
I'm
launched
gonna
the war
go
in
do
Iran
another shot.
a month ago, but does he know how to end it? Now European leaders say they'll help Trump on the Strait of Hormuz, but how much damage will be done to U.S.-European relations long after Trump's epic fury subsides?
Your weekly take on U.S. politics, The Bottom Line.
Iran is demanding an end to attacks on Hezbollah, while Israel and the US say Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire. Iran's regional allies have already been degraded, so with the future of Hezbollah at stake, can Tehran afford to compromise, and what does that mean for its influence? This is Inside Story. Hello again, I'm James Bays. For decades, Iran has been cultivating what it calls the axis of resistance. It's a coalition of armed groups backed by Tehran's money and weapons. They aim to tip the scales of regional power in Iran's favor. But that influence looks to be on shaky ground. Israeli forces are expanding their invasion in southern Lebanon and bombarding Beirut. They say it's part of a campaign to eliminate Hezbollah. So, could Hezbollah be a sticking point in ceasefire negotiations between the US and Iran? And how far is Iran willing to go to back its allies? We'll put those questions and others to our panel of guests in a moment. But first, this report from Michael Apple.
The Israeli military says it hit more than 100 targets across Lebanon on Wednesday. Daylight revealed the aftermath of one of its heaviest bombardments since early March, when Hezbollah attacked Israel in response to the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. Ostensibly, a ceasefire had been in effect in Lebanon since November 2024, but the Israeli military violated it daily. And despite Iran's objection, the ceasefire with the US hasn't stopped the Israeli assault on Hezbollah or its invasion of southern Lebanon, putting Tehran in a difficult position, caught between support for its ally and a path out of the war.
Our choice is to confront them to the utmost degree of self-sacrifice. We will not surrender. We will defend ourselves with our capabilities and our faith, no matter the sacrifice.
It's that resistance to Israeli occupation that led to the founding of Hezbollah, with Iranian funding and training 44 years ago. Israel assassinated its longtime leader Hassan Nasrallah in an airstrike in September 2024. Hamas in Gaza is another armed group that's received significant Iranian support. Israel killed its founders, Ahmed Yassin and Abdulaziz al-Rantisi, back in 2004, and more recently several senior officials during the war on Gaza, among them Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh. Instrumental in Iran's ability to build up these proxies in the region was the Quds Force, led for decades by Qasem Soleimani.
Qasem Soleimani has been killed, and his bloody rampage is now forever gone.
Iran also maintains influence in neighboring Iraq through a network of armed groups, including Kataib Hezbollah, established after the 2003 US invasion. Many of these groups are interwoven into
an
the
American
Iraqi
Pope,
government
and he hates Trump.
security forces under the
Ryan, I don't know
umbrella
what army that
of the
was.
Popular Mobilization Forces. Another lever of influence at Tehran's
Yeah, I tuned out
disposal
too.
is the Ansar Allah movement, known as the Houthis. Their location in Yemen places them within striking distance of Israel and enables them to disrupt shipping in the Red Sea through the Bab al-Mandab choke point. Collectively, these Iranian-backed groups are known as the Axis of Resistance. Although degraded by years
Only
of
if you
Israeli
believe that
and US
stuff, Larson.
attacks, they have proved they're still capable of waging asymmetric warfare against military superpowers. Mike Lappel, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Well, let's take a closer look at that relationship between Iran and its regional allies now with our panel of guests who are joining us. And with me in the studio is Hassan Ahmadian, Associate Professor at the University of Tehran. He specializes in Iranian foreign policy. From Bologna in Italy, we're joined by Rob Geist-Penfold. He's a lecturer in international security at King's College London. And in Paris, Nadim Khouri, the Executive Director of the Arab Reform Initiative. Thank you all for joining us on Inside Story. Let me start with you, Hassan, and let's start with a big picture question. How important is what we know as the axis of resistance? How important is that to Iran and in its foreign policy strategy?
You would think it's pretty vital.
Important, taking into account that Israel
They can fight on multiple fronts.
Two nuclear powers with obvious hostility towards Iran. And the war that we saw just, the ceasefire starting, but not in Lebanon. All of that is very important to Iran because these two don't hide their intentions towards Iran. Also, they don't hide their intentions towards Lebanon, towards the Palestinians, towards many of these parties that are party to the axis of resistance. So there is a common goal of standing up to U.S. impositions in the region and Israeli occupation in Palestine, but also around it in southern Lebanon, in Syria, elsewhere. And so that common goal brought these groups together to balance off the threat of Israel and, in extension, the American threat. And so it's, strategically very much important to Iran, but also to these parties who have their national agenda. In Lebanon, Hezbollah has the south that is under occupation. In Palestine, Palestinian struggle, it dates way earlier than the Iranian Revolution of 79. So to call them proxies defies the logic that they have their own national agenda, but they are connected to Iran because there is a common and shared goal of standing up to occupation and also U.S. presence that has been harmful to all of them.
Nadim, I mean, this is at the center right now of the diplomacy that is supposed to take place because the war with Iran, the bombardment by the US and Israel has ended for now, but the war in Lebanon has not, and Iran says the deal was that had to end too.
Exactly. And I think that the real point of tension here is for these groups between the agenda that is Iranian versus the agenda that is national, how much weight is given to each one of these elements?
It is part of our DNA, Larson.
For instance,
unfortunately,
when, Hezbollah was liberating southern Lebanon. But there have been other instances since then where
especially here, man. This country was founded on violence, right? We love our guns, we love our violence.
The Iranian part of its strategy, as opposed to a purely national strategy. So, for instance, when Israel was violating the ceasefire after 2024, Hezbollah did not respond almost for a year and a half. And it was only when the Supreme Leader Khamenei was actually assassinated that Hezbollah entered into the force. Same issue happened in 2000 when the Israeli army receded. Hezbollah should have turned at that point to the Lebanese state and said, look, I did all of this, but now we need to build a national strategy of defense. They didn't do that. And I think that's the core point. And again, the different groups are not the same. So maybe where the balance is with Hezbollah is different than where the Houthis are, which is also different where some of the Iraqi groups are.
Rob, I mean, one of the reasons we're talking so
you are
much
correct,
about this
Sharice.
is obviously the bombardment in Lebanon. I'll come to that in a moment. But the fact that Trump accepted the Iranian plan, not accepted the points in it, but accepted it as
no,
a
I cannot turn my volume down.
Negotiation in Islamabad. These 10 points, which
it has to be higher than the feed for the AI, for the YouTube algorithm.
That Iran wants. But Trump said, and I quote, "We received a 10-point proposal from Iran, and I believe it's a workable basis on which to negotiate." Now, among those 10 points, an end of the war against all components of the axis of resistance. That's one of the things that Iran is demanding in these points. Well, this goes way further than the Iran deal back in 2015. This is something that the US wouldn't discuss then, would it? It was only going to discuss the nuclear side of things.
Right, and this is the issue with this so-called ceasefire overall, in that not only is it contentious in itself, what remains even
It
more
is in our
contentious
nature.
is the fact that no one
That's
seems
interesting,
to
Larson.
agree about what everyone agreed about or didn't agree about. So yes, you're right to mention, James, that Trump said that these 10 points were the basis for negotiation. We've since heard from Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, saying that
And
the
blaming
10
immigrants
points
for
that the
everything,
US
Ryan.
agreed to were not the 10 points that Iran presented publicly. So the fact of the matter is that we don't know what Iran and the US actually agreed to. We don't know what both sides think they agreed to. And then you have the added complication, which is particularly pertinent to Lebanon, that various parties to the conflict
We were just waiting for you, War.
at the table. The Gulf states were not
Light
represented
'em
at
up.
the table, but also Israel was not represented at the table. Now, you had Netanyahu come out in a face-saving
Right,
press
Salsa?
conference and say, we were consulted, we were involved, we agreed to this ceasefire. But looking at the reality in Lebanon, this looks like another case of Israel agreeing to something verbally or on paper, but then in practice imposing facts on the ground that seek to change that status quo. So I think it's particularly significant that Israel's attacks on Lebanon yesterday were
Welcome, Scott.
fiercer than we've seen for a very, very
Trump
long
is a
time,
cunt.
leading to
You got
a
that right.
significant death toll, the majority of them civilians. This is not just about going after Hezbollah. You could argue there's a broader
I do not
strategy
have a
at play
P.O.
here,
box,
that
man.
is to put
Sorry.
so much stress on the ceasefire that it collapses. And I think that is Israel's game plan. And unfortunately, Lebanon is once again a pawn in this broader game, this power play between Israel and, of course, Iran. And it's the Lebanese people who are once again
I haven't
paying
seen
the high
any yet,
price.
War.
Hassan, would you agree with that? I mean, the bombardment that we've seen, the worst so far in the war, the bombardment of Lebanon, led to criticism from some of the US's close allies. France and the UK and the European Union have condemned the scale of the bombing. I mean, is Israel now trying to destroy the ceasefire with this bombing?
I think, as we had a discussion before, Israel is bombing the ceasefire through Lebanon. It's by bombing Lebanon, it wants to derail everything. And I think we have two parties in the negotiations, not negotiations.
Maybe he's trying to derail everything? Go figure. I mean, who knew?
States with Pakistan as the mediator. Pakistan,
I think his trial restarts
Iran,
Sunday.
put Lebanon's name as part of this ceasefire. So we are seeing a clear violation of that ceasefire. The Americans are saying, no, it wasn't. But according to the prime minister in Pakistan, it was. And according to the Iranian, it was. And so the Iranians are talking about stopping the process that started yesterday, that is the ceasefire. That's a hard call because that would be giving Israel what it wants. But I think the Iranians have made it clear they will not leave Lebanon and let it suffer under Israeli bombardment constantly. Either the two countries go out of the war together, or I think we are up for more escalation, because strategically, Iran has seen after 7th of October, Israeli expanding from one file to the other until reaching Iran and imposing a war and yet another war after 8 months, because there was no unity in this action against Israel and its provocations around Palestine.
Larson, you think a Tomahawk hit the Pentagon on 9/11?
Strategic mentality is telling the Iranians, we cannot leave Lebanon under bombardment. We have to do something about it. Ergo, you could hear talks about closure of the Strait of Hormuz, even worse than before. And then, of course, threats by Majid Musavi, the head of the aerospace division, responsible for the missiles and drone programs, the main pillars of Iran's military capabilities, that hitting Lebanon is hitting Iran, and we will not stand aside. And so we are going, I think, towards escalation unless and until the United States leashes Israel.
Nadeem, I think it's worth giving a little bit of context for our viewers.
You think it was a missile war that hit the Pentagon?
Hezbollah was already damaged and degraded. Its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, killed in 2024. And the rest of this so-called axis of resistance is nowhere near as powerful as it once was, because it used to include the Assad regime in Syria until that fell. And of course, in Gaza, Hamas has been seriously weakened.
Yes, the axis of resistance has been weakened, and it's also been weakened, frankly, because there is less support outside of its usual supporters in the Shia community, in large part because Hezbollah, for instance, intervened in the war in Syria against the Syrians by supporting Assad and others. And also in Lebanon, Hezbollah, for instance, is accused, and there is a lot of evidence that they were definitely part or facilitated some of the assassinations about 10 or 15 years ago. And they stood up against the protesters in Lebanon in 2019 that wanted to see a reform of the system. So the axis of resistance gets a bit more complicated, the story. In part, everyone recognizes Israeli war crimes. Everyone recognizes the harm that Israel has done to all of Lebanon, continues to do, and the occupation, and the Lebanese want to see their land liberated. The problem is, Lebanon does not want to see its sovereign decision of entering war and peace being hijacked by Iran. And this is what's happening here. So Hezbollah decided first to enter war against Israel to support Hamas after October 7th, and now to reattack Israel while in support and in revenge for the assassination of Khamenei.
Well, if I ever get a P.O. box, Mike, I'll let you know.
No one is denying that Israel has as well aggressive intentions towards Lebanon. But the best strategy, the sovereign
subscribe,
strategy,
Mike,
is something that
and at some point maybe I'll get one for the channel. It's actually not a bad idea.
Lebanese government, the actual Lebanese government, where Hezbollah is represented, took a decision to declare the Iranian ambassador persona non grata. Now, Iran may like this decision or it may not.
Yeah,
like
you guys are paying an arm and a leg for gas right now.
Democratically elected, legitimate government where everyone is represented. And what does Iran do? They decide to ignore that decision.
Okay, if I can bring in, you made some important points there, Nadeem. Let me bring in Hassan there. So, Hezbollah is not the Lebanese government. It's just one element of Lebanese society. It's very powerful militarily, but it can't make decisions for all of Lebanon. It's wrong, isn't it?
Of course. I mean, the Lebanese went for a ceasefire 9 months ago, after Israel, before the Iran war. They went for a ceasefire, and it continued for 15 months. And during all this time, the Israelis never ceased to attack Lebanon. We have Israel Katz, the Israeli defense minister, talking about Israel getting ready to attack Lebanon, but Lebanon started it before their timing. And so, talks of Lebanon, Hezbollah putting all Lebanon at risk, I think defies that talking point.
Yeah, Belinda, I hear you. You're totally reliant on imports, right? Imported oil.
During the war last year, for the most part. The 12-day war. And is that because the orders came from Tehran?
It didn't. Actually, my understanding of why they entered is that violations kept ongoing. Roughly 400 people were assassinated during this so-called ceasefire. It was a one-sided ceasefire. They wanted to be in this with Iran, to be part of the negotiations afterward. And the Iranians seem to be listening to that and insisting on it. That Lebanon
How big was that bag of chocolate chips?
For a ceasefire without Lebanon. We hear all Iranian officials. There seemed to be no daylight within Iran on the need to support Lebanon against Hezbollah, against Israel.
Thank you very
because
much, Belinda. I
that
appreciate
would
it. Thank you.
defy the logic of this alliance. But another point that it was mentioned, I think after before the war last year and the year before against Hezbollah and against Iran,
right, Mike?
The talks of Iran and
a
Hezbollah being weakened,
pound of chocolate chips. What are you, a big baker, Charisse?
In media. And I think that was
I know people
part of
like
the
you. You're all
logic
weird.
that the Americans were convinced by the Israelis to attack them because they were on their knees.
Wait a minute.
They needed the final blow.
You're in Pennsylvania,
and so
Charisse?
we saw what they did in this war, including Hezbollah and Iran.
Let me bring
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Rob, if I may. Rob, there's a big question here of how independent.
It's weird, right?
these
Two
groups
people
that
from
have
Pennsylvania?
axis of
What are the
resistance
odds?
Are from Tehran. Would you say, when you look at them, that Hezbollah is the most loyal of these groups? Because there are reports that there are Iranian officers in Hezbollah.
Oh, no. Don't say Northeast,
Absolutely,
Charisse.
Hezbollah is, the original, I guess, militant client or ally of Iran, whatever you want to call it, within the axis of resistance. Remember, it was started, as you mentioned earlier in the program, because of Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon. So it was a
Welcome,
way
Richard.
for Iran to project
Yeah, everything's
power,
going up, man.
and its influence. They are also, of course, they share an ideological affinity too, more so than other groups, for example, like Hamas, who are Sunni Muslims, or the Houthis, who are Zaydis, who, despite being Shia, is a very different type of Shia to the predominant.
Yeah, now you're going to pay through the
religion
nose for
in
all your
Iran,
baking
for
goods,
example.
Charisse.
So there is
Charisse.
an ideological component here.
Northeast
and a very, very
or
long
southeast
history. Both sides
Pennsylvania?
have fought together in, for example, the Syrian civil war. So this goes back a very, very long way. But I just want to stress here that when we're talking about the axis of resistance, the axis of resistance is something that I think is less important in Iranian strategic planning lately. We saw in 2024, in April and October, Iran directly attacked Israel for the first
Mideast?
time in order to defend the axis of resistance.
What would
This was
Mideast
Iran
be?
completely inverting the entire strategy here, because the whole point of the axis of resistance is to project power. And
Are you closer to Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, or Philadelphia?
Itself. Those attacks, that attempt by Iran to project deterrence, spectacularly failed. They did not do enough damage on Israel, and they
I don't blame you,
target
Belinda.
on themselves. That led us to the 12-day war, and of course that led us to the most recent conflict
Lehigh
as well.
Valley.
And that explains Iran's behavior in
Gotcha.
that recent conflict. It is a direct response to the failure of the axis of resistance, in that you now have Iran trying to cause so much chaos.
I'm up
using
in the
US
Scranton,
bases as an
Wilkes-Barre
excuse
area.
to tackle the GCC states, that is causing so much chaos in order to try and restore its deterrence at a state-on-state level. It is no longer reliant on the axis of resistance. It is trying to do as much damage as it can itself.
Nadeem,
So you're in
we had a
farm country,
discussion when
right,
we were planning
Charisse?
this program of which
There's a
was
lot
the
of farms
most
down that way?
powerful of
Around the
these
Lehigh Tunnel?
groups. Is it Hezbollah? Is it the forces in Iraq, because there's a very long border and very shared interests with Iraq and Iran and the Shia community in Iran? Or is it actually the Houthis? Now, the Houthis are further away geographically.
My
but
condolences, Charisse.
strategically, they have real power.
Why would you go to Scranton? Visiting family?
But
Business?
look, even a weakened Hezbollah remains, I think, for Iran, the crown jewel, because of the organic links that exist between Hezbollah and Iran, which don't exist with the Houthis. So you can't, you're not fully comparing apples to apples. Hezbollah believes in the Wilayat al-Faqih, which is a challenge for Lebanese sovereignty.
Right.
When you have a key political party that ultimately believes in a political entity that is supranational.
How'd they
and
do? They
doesn't
win?
share the rest of the sort of pact with the rest of the Lebanese. But clearly Hezbollah historically was the most disciplined. Iran was able to use it to train many of the militias in Iraq. There were also clear reports of Hezbollah going to train the Houthis. So I think Hezbollah remains a formidable power. The relationship, there's a lot of discussion going on about the autonomy
Right,
of
Belinda?
decision-making within
Phone books don't
Hezbollah
exist
and
anymore.
vis-a-vis Iran. Clearly, someone like Hassan Nasrallah had think was widely respected by the Iranian leadership, could find a way to reconcile between Iran's interest and what he perceived to be
It's the best way to go to Scranton. Get in, get out.
Lebanon's interest.
Was it was the tournament at a high school, or was it at like the Catholic Youth Center?
Nasrallah's height of power,
They used to do basketball
there were
tournaments.
reports, actually by Qasem Soleimani himself, that in the middle of the 2006 war, and this is something that Qasem Soleimani recounted, I think, on Iranian TV shortly before his death, he was saying he was there in the bunker with Hassan Nasrallah, took him by hand to rush away. So as a Lebanese, it makes us wonder, who was running the war in 2006? Was it Qasem Soleimani? How many IRGC officers were there on the ground? Who are they accountable to? We know that in 1982, in the chaos of the Lebanese civil war, there were, by some reports, at least 1,500 IRGC members that came through Lebanon to the Bekaa to form Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah is Lebanese. I'm not one of those who says that, you know, they're an intricate, essential part of Lebanon today. But this organic link to Iran is constantly eroding Lebanon's ability to rebuild a state project. And today, it's no longer just about rebuilding a state. It has deeply affected national cohesion in Lebanon.
Okay.
And this has to be addressed.
If I may, Nadeem, Hassan, I mean, now the 10 points are there and may form a basis for further negotiation in Islamabad if the talks even proceed.
University of Scranton?
If they're on the agenda, are they something that Iran is prepared to make compromises on? If Iran gets other security guarantees the war won't start again, will it make compromises on these regional groups and perhaps even give them up completely?
I don't think so. I think some of the points that are in this proposal are not for negotiations according to the Iranian rhetoric at this point, the official line. There are three elements that I think generally taken from these 10 points, three elements that are essential to Iran. Firstly, I think the economics, sanctions, the Strait of Hormuz, one of them or one based on the other, guaranteed by the other. Secondly, the security guarantees, which again is not about the U.S. giving guarantees, because the U.S. words mean nothing to Iran due to its past commitments that were all violated. Their main guarantees, their capabilities, and the Strait of Hormuz. That's the main guarantee, and that's why Iran is insisting on
Belinda,
managing
I know.
it, because it
He already
doesn't
said
want
that we can't afford these social programs and spending money on American citizens because he's got to fund this war.
Any other conflict. The third element that guarantees also, and is guaranteed by the Strait, but also in the other way around, it guarantees is the unity of fronts. That is, there's a regional war, we need a regional ceasefire, or there won't be a ceasefire. The Iranians are insisting on this. There are two out of the 10 points that are based on this. Lebanon is named in one specifically. Lebanon is that point. The second is
can't afford that.
The ceasefire should include all.
But can afford all this,
which I think Iran will not give up.
$1.5 trillion budget for the military.
And Nadeem Khoury. And thank you, too, for watching. If you'd like to get more context and analysis and detail on all aspects of the war, remember to check out our website, aljazeera.com.
Lackawanna.
Want to know what you think, too.
Lackawanna College.
On our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or on X. Tag us with your comments. We are at AJ Inside Story. From me, James Bays, and the team here, that's it for now. Al Jazeera's coverage from across the Middle East and around the world continues.
One more hour, guys. We're going to knock out one more, right? Now let's go one more. If everybody's in the mood.
We saw this exact same pattern happen in Gaza, the same lazy, flattened reporting that we saw in Gaza when it comes to the war on Iran.
The Listening Post decodes the media on Al Jazeera.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, Charisse.
Al Jazeera. Wherever you are.
Down to the pitch. Fans didn't give former Spanish international Xavi.
Okay, cool. What, war? Where you going? Oh, 1 more hour? Yeah. Well, you just got here. Lazy fuck. Stop being late.
Welcome to Al Jazeera's extensive coverage of the ceasefire in the war between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. I'm Riley Carlson. Here's what's coming up. Israel says it will hold direct negotiations.
A lot of money and a lot of lives,
Lebanon.
Charisse.
The
For
government
nothing.
in Beirut insists
For
the
nothing.
ceasefire needs to come first. Israel wounded. The assault has put a ceasefire
Maybe
between
if Trump
Iran,
hadn't raped
Israel,
little
and the
girls, we
United
wouldn't be in
States
the
at
middle of
risk
this.
Collapse. Leaders from Washington and Tehran will hold talks on Saturday. Friends and family members bid farewell to Al Jazeera journalist Mohammed Washah, who was killed by an Israeli drone strike in Gaza.
And later on, this is America.
You got it, Belinda. 1 more
Ceasefire
hour.
Uncertainty. Will the agreement between the US and Iran hold or return to large-scale hostilities? We look at the differences between the two countries and what could happen next.
Thank you for joining us. Lebanon's president says the only solution to end the bloodshed
In his
could
crib.
be followed by direct negotiations with Israeli officials. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has asked his cabinet to open direct talks with the Lebanese government, but he insists disarmament of Hezbollah must be part of those negotiations. Hezbollah has rejected any talks. The assault on Lebanon has put a ceasefire between Iran and the United States at risk of collapse, ahead of talks that are set to be hosted in Pakistan. That comes after Israeli forces killed more than 300 people in Lebanon on Wednesday
NPC,
when they launched
welcome.
over 100 strikes in just 10 minutes. They were the bloodiest attacks in the country since the U.S. and Israel's war with Iran began. Israel maintains it is targeting Hezbollah military sites. The Lebanese health ministry says more than 1,800 people have been killed since the conflict began.
What did Trump say? Only
Bob
guilty
McBride is
people use
following
the fifth.
developments out of Israel from the Jordanian capital of Amman. But first, let's bring in Heidi Pett, who is live for us in Beirut. Heidi, is there a chance that the Lebanese government will agree to open these communication channels if there is no ceasefire?
Iran's not going to get wiped off the map, Robbie. Come on.
I mean, in short, Riley, no. The Lebanese president, Joseph Aoun, in a statement earlier today, signaled that yes, Lebanon was open to direct talks with Israel, but that a ceasefire and what he described as an immediate ceasefire needed to happen before that. And that has been the position of many leaders here in Lebanon since the very beginning of this renewed war between Israel and Hezbollah that began in early March here. Now, we also had statements from the Lebanese Prime Minister today, Nawaf Salam, after a cabinet meeting. He stressed that Lebanon would be launching a formal complaint with the United Nations Security Council about Israel's attacks here in Lebanon. But the other thing of significance that he had to say was a commitment to disarming Hezbollah in the governorate of Beirut. Now, this has been a key demand of the Israelis to open talks. But it's not just the Israelis asking for this. This has been an aim of the Lebanese government for some
You deleted
time now.
what,
In fact, there's
Charisse?
a deadline
TT?
at the end of last year where Hezbollah was supposed to be disarmed. Now,
I haven't heard
obviously
anything
that
about ICE
passed
lately.
because
It's been
has
kind of
proved
quiet.
difficult For the
Ever since
Lebanese
they
government,
fired
or certainly
No.
the parts of it that are represented by the Prime Minister,
They're
and
not
the President
murdering
will
citizens
enforce these kinds of decisions.
on U.S. streets
The other one that
anymore,
they have
right? Not
failed to
shooting them in the
enforce
head.
Is this declaration that Hezbollah's
So
military
that's a
and
plus.
security activities were illegal. That declaration
Still
was
buying
made
warehouses,
in the
though.
first week of the war, and
Store
Hezbollah
human
obviously
beings.
continued to fire rockets into Israel and to attack Israeli troops that are participating in this ground invasion here in Lebanon. But it's significant, a renewal of this statement, a renewal of this commitment
TikTok.
today in the context of these talks that are reported to begin in Washington next week. Now, the other thing that
And
the president
did you
had to say
delete
today
TikTok because it was
an
purchased by
insistence
Trump's
that
billionaire
Lebanese should
buddies?
have faith in the state, that they would not tolerate internal strife. But of course, the significant party that is missing in all of this is Hezbollah themselves, and they have indicated that they're not open or interested in these talks. And in fact, a Hezbollah official speaking anonymously to the New York Times in the last couple of hours essentially said that government talks with Israel are none of their concern.
Heidi, in the meantime, there are strikes still happening
Sorry.
there. What is the latest that you're hearing?
Are you on Blue Sky, Charisse?
Yeah, so since we last spoke, there's been at least 2 Israeli airstrikes on the south of the country.
If not,
in
you
the
should give it a
district
shot.
of
It's like
Sidon.
Twitter with fewer
That's
Nazis.
a continuation of the trend
great.
over the course of the evening and, of course, over the course of the day, where we have
Billy,
seen Israeli airstrikes
what's going on, brother?
multiple locations, a drone strike targeting a car as well. The Israeli surveillance drone has been flying low over the capital for many hours. Residents here in Beirut have got a short reprieve. It has disappeared for the last little while, but the reassurance is sort of brief because Israel has launched new forced evacuation orders for the southern suburbs of Beirut
Hang on, Charisse.
a few hours ago, and notably this time they include the suburb of Janaa. Now that is an area of Beirut where many people who had previously been displaced from other parts of the southern suburbs had been sheltering. It is also the location of 2 hospitals, which the World Health Organization has sounded the alarm about. They say those hospitals are operating at full capacity, that there are no alternative medical facilities available, and that is because hospitals across
Charisse, there's
Lebanon
my handle
are
for
trying
Blue
to
Sky.
treat the more than 1,000 people
You want to
who
follow
were
me.
wounded in Israeli strikes across Lebanon yesterday, and they are still trying to count and identify the dead. We have also seen continued Israeli operations inside South Lebanon. They've been trying to
No, Mark.
encircle and indeed
You are
enter
incorrect.
the town of Bint Jbeil for some time now. And it
Trump's
appears
tariffs
that
raise
today
money
they have
for the
done that.
government,
We've had
not
statements
for the
from
people.
Hezbollah saying that they
It's
have
our money.
targeted and
We pay the
engaged in
tariff.
clashes with Israeli troops
Thank you,
on the
Charisse.
outskirts of
I'll
that
follow
town.
you
So
back.
that tells us that Israel is now completing this plan to encircle and enter that town.
You are
the
correct,
only
Sasa. The
operations that we've
Supreme
seen
Court
from
put a stop
Hezbollah
to
in
him.
the last 24
Well,
hours,
part of
they
his
have
tariffs.
announced 50 operations, 29 of those cross-border
Billy.
attacks into Israel.
I'm good,
It's
man.
significant
I'm
that
already
those
a couple
have resumed,
shots
of
in.
course,
How
because
are
they
you?
had initially paused in those first hours after the announcement of the ceasefire because Hezbollah,
Don't make fun of me,
in
Charisse.
their
That's not nice.
understanding, thought
You're
that
mean.
that applied here in Lebanon.
Farmer.
And when the Israeli military, by launching more than 100 airstrikes in 10 minutes on Wednesday, made it abundantly clear that Israel didn't consider that to be the case. And so Hezbollah has once again begun returning fire.
Heidi Pett reporting live for us from Beirut. Thank you, Heidi. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there is no ceasefire in Lebanon and that Israel will continue to target Hezbollah with full force.
Following repeated appeals from the Lebanese government to enter into peace negotiations with us, last night I instructed the cabinet to open direct negotiations with Lebanon in order to achieve 2 goals. 1, the disarmament of Hezbollah. 2, a historic, sustainable peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon.
Let's bring in Rob McBride now, who's following the Israeli government's reaction from the
Welcome,
Jordanian
Jeffrey.
capital, Amman. So, Rob, if the Lebanese government does not want to negotiate
You are
without
incorrect,
a ceasefire,
Jeffrey.
is there any chance that Israel will agree to stop so the
Jimmy.
talks can move forward?
Yeah, I mean, the official position of the Israeli government remains unchanged, that there will be, it says, no let-up in its strikes against Hezbollah, that it regards as just as much of a threat in many ways as Iran. And it's a threat that for many Israelis is a lot closer to home, with something like 1.5 million Israelis in northern part of the country actually living in communities, towns, cities along the border within the range of Hezbollah rockets. And as though to emphasize that threat and the fact that they are within range, there has been a marked
What's going on, Ibrahim?
attacks across the border in the late on Thursday, now through into the early hours here of Friday morning local time. There has been just
it's about that
midnight,
here too, Jimmy.
A rocket attack on the
Or
very
something.
important northern port city in Israel of Haifa.
You can
now,
afford
this
it,
is
right?
a strategically important city that has often come under attack by Hezbollah throughout the conflict. But this is the first time there has been a rocket attack on this city since this all-important agreement between Iran and the US came into effect in the early
That's
hours
what he's
of
doing,
Wednesday
Belinda.
morning. So it is significant.
I saw something on
Shortly
Drudge
after
that his
got
corruption
word
trial
that
starts
what
again
is thought to be a
Sunday or
missile
something.
was launched from Lebanon, traveling much further down
Or
the
next week.
coast of the Mediterranean, with alarms being sounded in the port city of Ashdod. Now, this is in south-central Israel. So this does seem to be a very serious escalation. The military say that in both occasions, the missiles or rockets were either intercepted or fell in open ground. And in addition to that, we've seen a return to the short-range rocket fire across the border into northern Israeli communities, similar to the kind of intensity that we were seeing during the 5+ weeks of the conflict.
350? No, you're getting a
Israeli
break, man.
military saying that by Thursday evening, the Hezbollah had fired a total of 70 rockets during the day on Thursday. All of it, of course,
Crazy
threatening
NPC.
this very fragile
Crazy.
agreement between Iran and the US.
Fragile indeed, Robin. There is criticism inside Israel about that ceasefire with Iran. But what's being said in the country now about the idea that talks could also happen on the Lebanese front?
Yeah, I mean, there is a sense that Israel is being forced into this, and that where the force is coming from is from the United States and Donald Trump in particular. It's been widely reported that in phone conversations between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, especially on Wednesday, that Trump told Netanyahu to low-key it with reference to these attacks into Lebanon because it is threatening to unbalance or
you're
maybe
charging a 20%
completely
tariff
ruin
on
the
imports
very
from
fragile
Australia,
agreement
let's say.
between Iran
Who
and the
pays
United
that?
States. Netanyahu
The importer
in video
pays it up
statements
front,
has said that he wants
and then
the
they pass
talks
that
to go
cost
ahead,
along
that it's
to the consumer.
opportunity, he says, for an
It's
historic
basic
agreement.
economics.
But the ultimate goal in any agreement, as far as Israel is concerned, is the disarming of Hezbollah. But it's something which has not
I hope
been
there's a
achieved
reckoning
in
at some
recent
point,
years
Belinda.
through conflict, through military means. In fact, with the army stressing repeatedly that so far bombs have alone will not disarm the Hezbollah group, seeming to suggest that maybe other means should be found. Riley?
All right, Rob McBride reporting live for us in Amman, Jordan.
Of course,
Thank you,
baby,
Rob.
forced Trump's hand.
Kuwait has blamed Iran and its allies for attacking vital facilities in the country. Earlier on Thursday, Kuwait's state news agency said a National Guard site was targeted by drones. The Kuwaiti Foreign Ministry has called it a violation of its sovereignty and its airspace. Let's bring in Rasul Sardar now, who's in the Saudi capital of Riyadh for us. Rasul, what more are you learning about these strikes in Kuwait?
Well, so now the Kuwaitis are saying that their critical facilities have been attacked by the drones fired by Iran and its proxies, armed factions. So here, it's not clearly mentioning which factions, in which country, but perhaps the interpretation based on the past events. And we understand that the Kuwaiti authorities mean the armed groups that are affiliated with Iran and based in Iraq. So, but at the same time, so there is a statement from the IRGC of Iran saying that since the beginning of the ceasefire, they have not fired any projectile toward any country, particularly the GCC. And they're saying, well, this is actually a plot by the Americans and the Zionist regime, means Israel. So they're accusing Israel and America of conducting these attacks, if indeed they have been, and so as an attempt to undermine the ceasefire. But for Kuwaitis, that they have been repeatedly
Israel is definitely undermining the ceasefire, for sure.
Affiliated with Iran is quite significant. So then the Saudis are also concerned about it. So Kuwait particularly is important because they were one of the most heated country in the region. So the oil facilities, petrochemicals, the oil tanks, refineries, international airports. And so now both Kuwait and Saudi Arabia particularly, during the negotiations, wants this threat of the Iranian proxies to be properly addressed, and in the future that they are not going to remain as a threat to the GCC countries, but particularly Kuwait and Saudi Arabia.
Right. And Rasul, you mentioned in there that Saudi Arabia has been speaking about
Right,
attacks
Belinda?
there as well. What can you tell us
The art
about
of the
what
deal.
Saudi is saying?
Anything to benefit Trump and his billionaire buddies, no matter who he
For
screws
Saudi
over,
Arabia, we're
including
seeing
allies.
a real case that they are releasing a damage assessment. It is quite a transparent report, and normally one could not see this kind of statements that frequently. So now the Saudi Minister of Energy is saying that its critical facilities have been targeted multiple times, including oil and gas production, transportation, refining facilities, as well as petrochemical plants and the electricity sector in Riyadh, the eastern province, and the industrial city of Yanbu.
Sasa, you hungry for kangaroo?
And so one Saudi citizen have been killed, 7 were injured, and saying that these attacks have caused disruptions in several several operational processes at the key facilities with the energy systems. And now they are giving the numbers quite
Yeah, I know he did, Belinda.
dramatic numbers, saying that East-West pipeline,
It's all
which is
about
a
the grift.
critical economic lifeline of Saudi Arabia, has been targeted multiple times, and that led to a loss of approximately 700,000 barrels per day of pumped volume through the pipeline. And then
You guys are
they also
crazy,
say,
man, with
well,
all this
Manifa
weird
production
food you're
plant
eating.
was attacked,
Antelope,
and as a
crocodile,
result, so
kangaroos.
there has been a drop of 300,000.
How can you eat a kangaroo? They're so cute. It's like eating a
barrels
dog.
of oil per day. And then previously, Khorai's plant was targeted, and saying that also resulted in a drop of
Really, Jeffrey?
300,000 barrels of oil. So the list is quite a long one. Statoil's facility in Jubail, Ras Tanura refinery, Samras refinery in Yanbu.
It is always
and
about
Riyadh
him, Belinda.
refinery.
Of course it
They
is.
were also attacked. And the LPG,
That's all he
petroleum
cares
gas
about.
exports, the export plants also were targeted. So here, they're simply giving a list of the places that were targeted, but also daily 1.3 million barrels of oil are gone from the market. That makes it daily around $120
Well, I believe that.
million.
I believe they can be
and
violent. I've
monthly,
seen the videos.
Nearly $4 billion of dollar being lost because
I
of
don't know, man.
the
They look
war.
cute on
And in the
TV.
coming days,
Don't yell.
perhaps we're going to see kind of same assessments coming out from the other GCC countries that we
Love
can
pork
see
chops
the
and
true
bacon.
scale of the impact of this recent war.
Really
Carry
significant
Roo.
numbers there. Rasul Sardar in Riyadh. Thank you for bringing those to us. Ahead of those talks,
Yeah,
Iran's
maybe,
Supreme Leader
Billy.
Moshtaba Khamenei says that Tehran does not want war with the United States and Israel, but that it would protect its rights as a nation. He issued a statement read by Iranian state media saying, "We will certainly seek compensation for all the
Yeah,
damages
but he
inflicted
did he
and
issue
blood
the
of
statement,
martyrs,
or is this guy
as well as
actually
the blood
dead?
money for the veterans of this war, and we will definitely advance the management of the Strait of Hormuz to a new level. We have never sought war, and we do not seek it now, but we will not relinquish our legitimate rights in any way." U.S. President Donald Trump has also issued a series of warnings to Iran. Writing on True Social, he said, "There are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now." In a second post, Trump said Iran will never have a nuclear
This
weapon.
loser.
He wrote, "You'll see oil start flowing with
He told
or
ABC
without
News
the help
yesterday
of
he was
Iran."
going to go in cahoots with the
Abbas
tolls with
Aslani is a
Iran.
senior research
And now
fellow
today
at
he
the Center
changes
for
his
Middle
mind
East Strategic
because he's got
Studies, and he
dementia.
joins us now live from Tehran.
Fucking
Abbas, it's good
retard.
to have you with us again. Thanks for being here. Is Iran charging fees for passage through the Strait of Hormuz? What are officials in Iran saying about this?
Well, what is clear so far is that Iran is saying that there is a new status quo in the Strait of Hormuz, and this geopolitical reset comes as a result of the recent aggression. Tehran says that it wants to reconstruct the country, so this could create a source of revenue for the country. But additionally, what Tehran perceives, in relation to the situation in the waterway is that it can control it in a security, aspect, in a manner that can prevent future attacks against the country. So this is an asset or a leverage that now Iran and the world know that Tehran can control, and if necessary, it can disrupt the transit of the energy, and this can impact the global energy market. So this is a leverage that Tehran now thinks have, which is very important and very valuable. So that's why they are stressing that they need to have a new protocol and regime for the strait. Part of that new protocol is to get tolls from those passing, ships and vessels. But the quality of the, cooperation with those tankers, passing by could also might be subject to the quality of Tehran's relations with those countries and capitals. But what is clear so far is that there is a new status quo, and Tehran thinks that a new Strait of Hormuz has been born.
Abbas, if that is the case, and Iran sees this as leverage, does that mean it would be prepared to negotiate on this in exchange for some of the other issues, some of the other things that it might want, something like international sanctions relief?
Riley, this was among the top 10 points presented in the Iranian plan
Welcome,
through
Brandon.
Pakistan to the United
You
States.
think so? You think Trump's got the balls not to tackle?
Clearly in the statement by the Iranian Supreme National Security Council following the ceasefire agreement. So that's why.
What will that do to oil prices here? If Trump wipes out their reserves.
There is talks in
and their ability to pump oil.
With the United States, and so the economic aspect.
There you go, Mike.
To the,
You're always thinking, buddy.
The upcoming negotiations could be one of the important ones. This could be related to the Strait of Hormuz, as well as the lifting of the sanctions, specifically when it comes to Iranian oil sale.
What does Iran see at this point, Abbas, as the most important point in this negotiation for it to succeed on? Is there something somewhere that it just won't budge?
Did they, Billy? They flew planes into Iran today?
Riley, the uncertainty surrounding the negotiations have been very visible, given the Israeli strikes against
80,000 visas where?
Iranian delegation has not departed from Tehran. Iran is saying that as long as Israel continues to carry out attacks against Lebanon, there will be no negotiations. This indicates that a ceasefire excluding Lebanon is fundamentally unacceptable for Tehran. Additionally, there have been some discussions from the American side on the nuclear enrichment matter. That could be also creating an atmosphere for difficult discussions. But as we speak, the most important, obstacle to engage in those discussions
that's the whole point,
is what
right?
is taking place
It's
in
a global
Lebanon.
commodity.
Right,
so
Abbas
if you take 20% of the world's oil supply off the market,
Thursday
it affects our prices here at home.
Israel's assassination
I mean,
of
you see it
Iran's
every day
Supreme
when you
Leader
fill your
Ali
tank.
Khamenei. Thousands of supporters gathered in Tehran to mourn the late leader. Tawhid Asadi reports.
Here we are downtown in the Iranian capital, Tehran.
The 80,000 visas here in the U.S. were canceled. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the chat for a few minutes.
By the Americans and Israelis. On that attack, the Supreme Leader and several military commanders were killed. Today marks the 40th day since the killing of the Supreme Leader. Thousands have gathered here at this event in Tehran, and similar events are reported across the country. Some carry Iranians, Hezbollah, and Palestinian flags, many dressed in black, a symbol of mourning. Chants against the US and Israel fill the air. Emotions are high and the messages are clear, a call for unity and a signal of solidarity.
We stand behind our leader, Sayyid Mujtaba Khamenei. It's been 40 days since we lost our
You
imam,
don't have to
but his
purchase the
successor
Iranian
is
oil.
Mujtaba Khamenei. Even though we have not yet
If the
seen
strait
him,
is
we
closed
will
or
put this in
Iranian
our
oil
hearts.
is taken
We
off
have
the
come to
market,
offer our
you're limiting
condolences to
supply
him.
on a global commodity that's
The one
priced
who lost in this
globally.
war was Trump because he failed to achieve any of the promises and goals he had set for it.
Regarding the negotiations, I believe our governing system must remain fully vigilant.
Considering the positive signals they are receiving from people in the streets and from our military forces on the ground, they should enter these negotiations from a position of strength.
I have a question for the negotiators. Do you think it's possible to negotiate or sit at the table with someone who repeatedly breaks their commitments? Someone whose lack of reliability has been proven time and again, not only towards Iran but also towards Hezbollah and Lebanon, Gaza, and many other places. Twice when we came to negotiations, we were attacked.
Wouldn't doubt
There's
it, Ryan.
no trust at all.
This comes on the second day of a ceasefire in a fragile situation following weeks of war. It also coincides with the anticipated talks between Iran and the United States, expected to take place in Islamabad soon. The coming days will be critical in determining whether a
We already
ceasefire
do.
can hold. But however it goes, the public mood here is that of defiance and resilience. Toida Sadia, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
We're already a net
Let's
exporter.
take a look at some of the day's other news. A funeral has been held in Gaza for our colleague from Al Jazeera, Mubashir, who was killed by Israel in a targeted drone strike. Mohammed Wishaw was a correspondent for our sister channel. The airstrike caused the car he was traveling in to burst into flames. Gaza's government media office says
Yeah, I just looked that up,
262
Christopher.
journalists have been killed since Israel's war began in 2023. Our colleague Hani Mahmoud was at Mohammed Wishaw's
Right, Ryan? They
funeral
got
in
nothing to
central
lose.
Gaza.
Why not go for it?
Today we're not just covering a story, we're walking in it. What you see here is a funeral procession of our colleague from Al Jazeera, Mubashir, who was killed in a drone strike that targeted his vehicle as of yesterday, later in the evening time, on his way to work alongside the coastal road.
Venezuela needs a lot of work right now to get up to full capabilities. Years worth of work, billions of dollars worth of work.
Many journalists here say they feel increasingly vulnerable. They believe their work is being suppressed. That documenting reality has become a risk in itself. Being a journalist in Gaza is stepping into uncertainty. There is no clear line between danger and safety. And there's no guarantee while you go out reporting that you're coming back alive. His family and colleagues have been telling us that Muhammad was on his way to work. He was on
Probably
his way
someday,
to tell a story,
NPC.
but he became part of the story. Again, sadly, another journalist killed, another voice silenced. And since the beginning of this war, we've seen close to 262 Palestinian journalists.
No, Trump would
killed
not
by
have
the
done that,
Israeli
Belinda.
military, and close to 10 of them from the Al Jazeera network. This is the reality of Palestinian journalists.
Yes, it did,
Despite
Mike.
What's going on? We're seeing them. We're seeing journalists still continue their work, continue their reporting, documenting Israeli atrocities across the Gaza Strip. What we're seeing here is his family walks beside him. Now, colleagues, friends, people
Yeah, but that's
who
going
know
to
him
take quite a
just
while,
as a
Christopher, to
journalist and as a
get
person.
fully
Today
online.
we're burying a colleague, but his stories and the stories he was trying to tell do not end here. They will live on through those who are still here, still reporting, still trying to make the world see. Hani Mahmoud, Al Jazeera, from Deir al-Balah City, Palestine.
Russia has returned the remains of 1,000 bodies of Ukrainian service members after 4 years of war. But thousands more remain unaccounted for, leaving Ukrainian families without any closure. Audrey McAlpine reports from Kyiv.
Maybe they will,
Return the
Christopher.
bodies of the fallen heroes of Mariupol. That's what that sign says. And on Thursday, the remains of 1,000 bodies were returned by Russia to Ukraine. After 4 years of war, nobody knows what the true number of killed is.
I hear you,
But
Billy.
there are
We'll see what
estimates
happens
that
down there.
number over 100,000. But even
He's through
more than
genocide.
that is
That's
the
right.
number who are missing. Every flag here marks one person who has given their life in the war. But for family members and for fellow servicemen and women, the hardest part is not knowing the fate of their loved one.
Even in my unit, there are missing ones whose bodies haven't been found. And their families still have hope, even after 4 years, that their loved ones are still alive. So if bodies brought back, they can be at least buried properly.
Now that these bodies have been returned, the rigorous process of identifying them begins. Forensics experts use any clue possible. In some cases, DNA from clothing can be matched with the remains of these bodies, or a memento, a small pin anything that's included in the body bag can also be used to help identify them. And with the return of these 1,000 remains, it means that some families may finally get the answers that they've been waiting for. Audrey McAlpine, Al Jazeera, Kyiv.
Following the exchange with Ukraine, Russia received the remains of 41 of its soldiers. These exchanges are one of the few stable channels of communication between the two countries. Yulia Shapovalova reports from Moscow.
It's been the third exchange of the bodies of the dead servicemen between Russia and Ukraine since the beginning of this year. Moscow handed over the remains of 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers to Kiev in exchange for 41 bodies of the Russians. Totally more than 500 bodies of Russian servicemen have been returned this year.
Love Soylent Green, Belinda.
Regular exchanges,
One of my all-time
over
favorites.
19,000 bodies of Ukrainian soldiers have been handed over to Kiev.
You might be
After
eating
the
it soon.
procedure of identifying the bodies, officials will contact
Tuesday
relatives of the
is
dead.
Soylent Green Day.
The body exchange has been carried out within the framework of humanitarian agreements reached last summer.
Well, both
with the
parties need to
mediation
get
of Turkey.
significantly younger,
Once
Christopher.
Russia and Ukraine conduct regular
Too many
prisoner
old people.
exchanges.
Way too
In
old.
February, Russia returned
Both parties.
157 people and handed over the same number of Ukrainian servicemen to Kiev. At the moment, this is one of a few stable humanitarian channels of interaction between the two warring sides. Yulia Shapovalova, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
U.S. First Lady Melania Trump has denied ever having a relationship with late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Sure. Ah, fuck. Bastard. That was Trump doing that.
Her girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein was arrested in 2019 on charges of sex trafficking of minors. His death in a Manhattan jail cell was ruled aside. This image of the Trumps with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell was taken at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in February of 2000. That's before Epstein was convicted. Lebanon's president says the only solution to end the bloodshed in his country is a ceasefire with Israel. It comes after Israeli forces killed more than 300 people in Lebanon on Wednesday.
Well, she's hawking a book, so.
The assault on Lebanon has put a ceasefire between Iran,
Give
Israel,
me a
and the
break.
United States at risk of
She wasn't good
collapse.
friends with
It's
Maxwell
emerged
or
as a
anything.
potential sticking point
Okay,
ahead of Saturday's
sure.
talks between the U.S. and Iran, being hosted by
They're all
Pakistan.
scumbags.
Donald Trump has once again renewed threats against
It
Iran.
is the
US
civilians that
president
suffer.
said Tehran, quote, better not be charging fees to oil tankers
Half hour left,
passing through the
guys.
Strait of
Thank you all
Hormuz.
for coming. Thank you for
Now
liking and
let's go to
subscribing,
Washington for our
everyone.
regular
Appreciate
segment
it.
from the U.S. Capitol. This is America.
Friends and clients. Yep.
This is America, and this is the former Iranian embassy in Washington, a sealed time capsule abandoned since the 1979 revolution. Now, at this juncture, the U.S. and Iran are far from reestablishing diplomatic ties. But is the ceasefire and Trump's suggestion of working together with Iran meaningful steps? I'll be back later
Yeah, the
with
peace
more
president,
on that. But
right?
first, here's Anna Burns-Francis in our Washington studio.
Thanks, Heidi. Peace through strength, the White House says. But with only a tentative
Christopher, you're
ceasefire in
banking a
place,
lot on
will
Venezuela.
peace be achieved through concessions or more conflict?
Wars like
Kimberly
this keep
Halcott is
going
at the
on,
White
man. You're
House
going to be
today.
paying
Richard
high
Gaston
prices at the
is
pump
live
for a
us
long
at the
time.
State Department.
Long time.
The most important 2 days are ahead, with negotiations between the United States and Iran due this weekend. America hasn't openly published its list of demands.
You're welcome,
but the
Belinda.
president
Thank you
and
for
his
coming.
team
Thank
have
you
been
for
keen to
subscribing.
remind the public why the country went to war.
It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. You know, we got regime change. We do. We're dealing with a much different regime than before.
Yeah,
We're dealing with
a much
different
more
people.
hardline regime
If we
now.
could do something,
Good job.
They have to open it up. They have to open up the strait.
It was open before you started your war, you retard. You
When
fucking
Iran
Oompa Loompa.
counteroffered the 15-point American plan with its own list of 10 demands, Donald Trump said they were workable and reasonable. But then his press secretary said the list was thrown in the garbage.
And the idea that President Trump would ever accept an Iranian wish list as a
Shut
deal
your
is
fucking
completely
cock holster, you
absurd. The
stupid,
president
ignorant,
will only
shrill
make a deal that
bitch.
serves in the best interests of the United States of America.
What are those interests? Here's a reminder of where America and Iran lie in terms of negotiating a peace deal. Each side's conditions for ending the war have been broadly outlined, and while Washington's list hasn't been exclusively published, it's clear there are major differences in demands.
She's
US
such a
media
phony,
leaks suggest
Charisse,
America
just like
is
everybody
open to
else in this
discussing
administration.
sanctions relief, while Iran is demanding the lifting of some sanctions. The US says Tehran must never
Why do you
develop
think
a
she got her
nuclear
job,
weapon and
Charisse? Do you
must
think she was
stop the
qualified
enrichment
for
of
it?
uranium.
Or do you think Trump
Tehran
looked at her and
reportedly
thought she was
demands its
pretty, and
nuclear
that was it?
program be accepted. The reopening of the Strait of Hormuz is also a key
I hope
US
Hegseth
demand.
ends up in
Tehran
jail.
says
He should.
it needs a guarantee that Iran maintains control over the waterway. The US also wants Iran to end its support for the likes of Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. But Iran is demanding
Well,
the
he
US
still
and
wants
Israel
Greenland,
stop the war on
Belinda.
all fronts, including fighting against those groups which are its regional allies. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, is now the one spearheading those negotiations. For more on where the talks will go, we're joined by our correspondents, Kimberly Halkett at the White House and Richard Gaisford at the State Department. Kimberly, I'll start with you. J.D. Vance has been shoulder-tapped to lead these talks. Why?
Well, what we
'Cause
know
Trump doesn't
from
want him
the
around.
information coming out of the White House is there are a number of reasons why J.D. Vance has been tapped for this. The first is that the U.S. president believes that he has been pivotal, given the fact that he has been quietly
pivotal in
shouldering some
anything.
of the back-channel discussions between the United States, Israel, and Iran. And so, as a result, he is the most likely person to lead this endeavor. But also, we know that this is a signal that the U.S. president is putting an enormous amount of importance on seeing the success of these talks. In other words, putting J.D. Vance at the helm of the delegation elevates this and is a signal or gesture to Iran of the significance. We should
I
point
agree,
out some
Belinda.
of the most significant talks between the two nations in decades. Now, having said that, there's also a recognition of a deficit in trust between the parties. And so as a result, given the fact that the Middle East envoys Jared Kushner as well as Steve Witkoff were involved in negotiations that ultimately ended up breaking out in military conflict, there is a desire to try and reduce the lack of trust between the parties by putting someone else in charge. So there is an awareness that the former negotiators were more aligned with Israel. J.D. Vance is seen as not only being more neutral, but also having better decision-making authority.
Well, Richard, I'll bring you in here when we talk about who gets to be in charge or leading these talks. The State Department usually is the one responsible for setting political agenda. So where's Marco Rubio in the lead
Possible, Charisse.
Yeah, ordinarily, Anna, you're right.
It was
You would
kind of
expect
weird that
Marco
she brought all
Rubio
this
and
up
the State
today.
Department to be right at the centre of all these events. But the Secretary of State's
What's up,
been really
Brian?
quiet recently.
Welcome.
We saw him yesterday here at the State Department welcoming Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, but no questions answered at all. Nothing said in front of cameras before that meeting. And what we've seen over the last few days, absolutely nothing from the Secretary of State on social media since Easter, when he talked about Easter and the ability of America to go into Iran and pick up those
Good question,
two
Belinda.
pilots. So it seems to be taken out of the State Department's hands. Instead, we have J.D. Vance, as you've been talking about, heading off to lead these talks, accompanied by Steve Witkoff, who, of course, is
I
a
hope so,
millionaire
right, Beth?
property developer friend of Donald Trump, employed directly.
I mean, he's already
by the
fired a
White
bunch of
House,
generals.
And Jared Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law, another millionaire, an investment banker who's working as a volunteer. So none of them answering to the State Department, where you might expect there to be some sort of diplomatic frenzy at the moment. They may well be behind the scenes trying to clear up that confusion that J.D. Vance has been talking about. Certainly too, fielding calls from allies, trying to get their wants and needs as part of these negotiations. Problem is, if this top team isn't hearing them, Anna, you do wonder how successful these negotiations might be on behalf of those allies.
Richard Gaisford at the State Department, Kimberly Halkett at the White House. Thank you both. Well, Iran's original plan to end the war looked like it had been written by ChatGPT. At least that's what the US Vice President claimed. But as both sides head to Islamabad, key
Couch
demands
fucker.
from either party could scupper talks at any point, as Phil Lavelle explains from the State Department.
A question a lot of people are asking this place, the State Department. What does that word, victory, actually mean? Well, there's your definition. A success Triumph or superiority achieved over an opponent, the final and complete overcoming of a challenge. But is this challenge over? Really? President Trump says it is, claiming the US has won a total and complete victory, a sentiment echoed by his defense secretary.
Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V
Yes, Jeffrey, I
military
do.
victory.
Try telling that to the Iranians, who claim they came out on top. Their vice president saying this 40-day war was not merely a military victory, but a turning point in changing strategic equations in the region.
I saw
and the
that,
world.
Belinda. Yeah.
The fact is, this
Trying to
is
get Orban
a precarious
reelected.
ceasefire. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance called it
Hope it blows
a
up in his
fragile
face.
truce. Both sides have their competing demands. The US with its 15-point plan, Iran responding with a 10-point version, apparently its second attempt, because
The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan
Get him,
that was
Charisse.
fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage.
You can be black
by
or a
President
lesbian.
Trump
You can't be
and his
both.
negotiating team.
Come on.
And there are
Everybody
a
knows
lot of
that.
red lines here. For the US, Iran's nuclear ambitions is one of them. Iran has a stockpile of near-weapons-grade, highly enriched uranium. And weapons which Americans were told could soon be used to attack them. Iran has always maintained it is not seeking to build a weapon, and it is for peaceful purposes.
دکترین هسته ایران یک دکترین صلح‌آمیز بود.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Iran's nuclear doctrine has been a peaceful one, and we have always sought and still seek to exercise our rights to benefit from peaceful nuclear energy.
President Trump now claims that stockpile would be taken care of in a peace deal. Iran has a ballistic
Was that
missile
Orban,
program, which
Belinda?
Washington wants
Yeah,
eliminated.
him and Putin
Lots
are
of US
buddies.
combat forces are also based in the Middle East. Iran wants them gone. Then there is the Strait of Hormuz. That is one of the biggest sticking points. 20% of global oil and LNG goes through this narrow waterway, or it did, until Iran blocked it. Now Tehran's controlling who goes through and wants them to pay for the privilege. It's after cash to rebuild the damage caused by the US and Israel's bombs.
Dump Trump.
Plus, there are resolutions. There are
Dissolve
lots
ICE.
against Iran.
I'm all for it.
IAEA, the UN. Iran wants them ended, along with all sanctions. The US Vice President J.D. Vance is due to be at those talks in Islamabad.
Iran does have the
representing
right to
US,
defend
but
itself.
It won't be straightforward, as Obama's Secretary of State John Kerry found out back in 2015 as he worked on the original nuclear deal, pictured deep in thought here in Vienna, contemplating America's next move. Because so much of this is about strategy, and the clock is quite literally counting down day by day as we wait to see if this pause does indeed become permanent. Phil Lavelle, Al Jazeera, at the State Department.
So, still a way to go
Yeah,
to
no
find
new
common
wars,
ground.
right?
Joining me today
What
to
they voted
discuss
for.
what that might look like is Victoria Taylor, former US
No new
Deputy
wars
Assistant
and lower
Secretary for
prices on
Iran
day
and
one.
Iran, and Kenneth Katzman, a former Iran
It's
analyst
working
at
out
the
great.
Congressional Research Service. Thank you both for joining me today. Victoria, will this ceasefire hold?
I think this is an extremely fragile ceasefire, and the way that I view it is not really as a framework for negotiations, but more of an off-ramp. Of course,
Vance is
going to
do exactly what Trump tells him to do.
President Trump threatening to destroy a civilization, and then we moved very quickly to the ceasefire. I think there's a lot of complications to reaching a deal and to making this ceasefire stick. The 10 points from the Iranians have almost zero overlap with the 15 points originally presented by the United States. So I think there's a long road ahead.
I'm not getting a huge sense of optimism from you then, Kenneth. Are you on the same page?
You're not going to get more optimism from me either. But, you know, Iran still has, the war did not really change any of Iran's positions. Iran is still insisting on being able to enrich uranium. They are still refusing to give up the stockpile of enriched 60% enriched uranium. They're now, according to their version, they're insisting the U.S. basically leave the Middle East, which is not going to happen. But there is what gives us potentially cause for
Belinda,
optimism.
his wealth
There
is
seems to
just
be a
about
tug of
doubled,
war
according to
between
Gemini,
hardliners and
from
more
3.9
pragmatic
billion
elements in
to
Iran.
roughly
And that's
6.5
what
billion.
produced the ceasefire, and I'm seeing evidence of that play out.
Because I guess there's a line here, whereas it's not just the US versus Iran, it's factions within the US administration and within the Iranian leadership as well as to what you concede on and what you will give and take. Do you see, Victoria, any realistic demands from Iran that the US is willing to accept, whether we look at list 10 point number 1, 10 point number 2, any of the demands that are publicly available?
Well, I think the real cause for optimism here is that we did come back for the brink, and there was an agreement from both sides to halt what would have been a very
NPC?
dramatic
Why not,
escalation.
right?
And I think that's a reflection.
You got nothing to lose.
Domestic
Might as well try to build those
realities in the
nukes.
United States. And
Look at
I
North
think
Korea.
also
If
a
you build the
reflection
nuke,
of the
then all of a
fact that for
sudden
both
Trump
Iran
wants
and
to
the
be your
United
friend,
States,
not your enemy.
escalating the conflict is unlikely to produce a better outcome for either side. In terms of what either side can accept,
greedy.
you know, I think there were negotiations that have occurred throughout the course of this past year on the nuclear program.
Musk going to be a
There
trillionaire.
may be some common ground that could be found there. What will be
What could
harder
go wrong?
is the insistence of Iran to maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz, which is a real non-starter, not only for the United States, but the countries in the Gulf and many other countries around the world. And I think also the idea that the United States would suddenly withdraw
Apparently not,
all of its
Jeffrey.
military forces from the Middle East is not something the U.S. would ever consider.
Which presumably, Kenneth, Iran knows, right?
Well, they know, but they feel they're in a strong position because they were able to restrict traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. They feel they have Mr. Trump on the run. But I think what I argued last time when I was here was they may be underestimating Mr. Trump's resolve. Yes, the polls show we shouldn't escalate.
What about
the
Elon,
American
Belinda?
people were perhaps against this operation, but I would not underestimate his
Oust
potential
Elon?
to escalate. He does
Yeah,
not
they had a
want
falling
to
out.
appear to have caved in or be a loser or have blundered badly in this operation, and I think
There's
there
still
is
some
a chance
Doge
he will
guys walking
escalate if
around
he
in
feels he
Washington.
needs to.
What are then, Victoria, when we talk about, 'cause that sounds like some uncertainty from Kenneth, what are the unknowns about these talks? What specifically should we be looking at and thinking, what does that mean and where does this go?
Well, I think the primary challenge right now, of course, is Lebanon. Is Lebanon part of the ceasefire? Is it not part of the ceasefire?
Yep, Salsa.
Does the Israeli agreement to negotiate actually help de-escalate what appears to be another front of
He
this
did use 'em.
conflict? I think another thing that we need to be
And-
looking at
and-
is whether Iran even
and
agrees
Elon
to
used
negotiate
Trump.
on some of the issues that have been core
You know,
priorities.
look
for
at all the money
multiple
he
US
gets in government
administrations, and that's
contracts.
primarily the Iranian possession and use of ballistic missiles, Iran's support to the proxies throughout the region. And those are issues Iran has never agreed could be part of any negotiation.
Iran has agreed to come back to the table, perhaps in some respect here because there is a change in the negotiating team. How important, Kenneth, is it that J.D. Vance is spearheading these talks?
Well, I'm not sure that's necessarily material, but I think, you know, since...
Why not? Because it is a change.
Well, it's a change. I mean, he's sort of leading, but Witkoff and Kushner are still there. But what I think we're underestimating the degree to which Iran was shaken up by that rescue mission last weekend. That was a big humiliation for Iran. The United States basically set up an air base.
Yeah, it's a
40
big
miles
humiliation
outside
for
their
America,
second
too.
most important
How many
city.
aircraft did we
And
lose?
they not only couldn't prevent
You had to
this, they
scuttle
didn't even know about it.
C-130s?
And that was, I think, a big shock that I think
You fucked it
contributed
all
to
up?
bringing them to the table. And I think they may be mistaken if they think Mr. Trump will not use ground intervention if he feels he needs to.
Yeah, okay, although that would be a huge step. And the president clearly feels a new strategy
Stop,
is
Jeffrey.
needed when it
Just
comes
stop
to getting a deal
with that
done.
nonsense.
The deal, right? How's that moving? Is it okay? The big deal? You see it happening? So if it doesn't happen, I'm blaming J.D. Vance. If it does happen, I'm taking full credit.
Blame the couch fucker. Why not?
No, I think it'll be, I think it has to happen. I think they're desperate.
Perhaps in jest, but has J.D. Vance been given a bit of a hospital pass in terms of trying to actually negotiate a realistic outcome here, Victoria?
I mean, I think it's a very difficult deal, and it was a difficult deal to achieve even ahead of the war. I don't think the terms for the United States dramatically improved, even though the U.S. and Israel can really claim significant military victories. But I would say, you know, the inclusion of J.D. Vance as part of the negotiating team is significant. And I think it's an important signal, not only for the United States to send to the vice president, but it's something probably the Iranians also welcome. J.D. Vance is known not to be supportive of
Well, we're
you
being
know, a
cheated
very assertive US
to the tune of
military role.
$1.5 trillion
Reporters suggest
for a
he's not
defense
particularly
budget,
in favor
Jeffrey.
of this war.
And Trump saying
so I
he
think
can't
for the
afford domestic
Iranians, his
programs anymore
inclusion
because he's got to
also,
fight wars.
sends a signal that the U.S. is actually trying to achieve diplomatic
And the
deal.
corruption in places like Minnesota were already under investigation. People were already arrested.
It is being discussed quite openly.
In jail.
Is that also in some ways a message to the American public and maybe to more mainstream Republicans that this is a sense of pulling back a bit and getting things to a more neutral ground and not escalating this conflict?
Well, I think it's definitely different than having Secretary of State Rubio head the team. I mean, he's got a very different, much more interventionist reputation for obvious reasons, particularly in Latin America. But even in Iran, I think he's much more viewed as perhaps willing to see the benefits of escalation.
You are correct, Belinda.
Vance obviously has been against getting into a quagmire, more appealing much more to the MAGA base.
No, Jeffrey.
No long wars, no regime
The
change
white woman
wars, and so
that was in charge of a lot of that
he might
fraud
soften the
is
US
in prison.
positions on some points.
Well, J.D. Vance has said that if the Strait of
Yes, they did,
Hormuz
Charisse.
isn't reopened, then President Trump will not abide by the terms
Agreed,
of the
MPC.
ceasefire.
What the president has also shown is that we still have clear military, diplomatic, and maybe
That's right,
most
Ryan.
importantly, we have extraordinary economic leverage. So the president has told us not to use those tools. He's told us to come to the negotiating table. But if the Iranians don't do the exact same thing, they're going to find out that the president of the United States is not one to
Name of
mess
who,
around.
Jeffrey?
Kenneth,
The
I'll
white
come
woman
back
that
to
was
you there,
running the
because we were
show?
just discussing it. What do you
I
make
don't know.
of
You'd
that
have to
breakdown?
Google
Because
it.
obviously all those things he listed are tools that you do use in a negotiation as well.
Well, I think that comment about, do not mess around, Mr. Trump does not mess around. I think Iran would be wise to listen to that advice. And,
Really? Taco doesn't mess
I think
around?
Mr. Trump is speaking
He tacos
today. He may
around.
announce more U.S. troops
Come
coming
on.
to the region. That would be within his style to ratchet up the pressure as talks are about to begin.
The problem is still the Strait, though, isn't it, Victoria?
Yeah, I think the Strait remains an extremely vexing challenge and one that cannot be solved militarily with great ease. And so I think that's why we
There wasn't
also
a
come to
challenge 6 weeks
scenario
ago.
where
It was wide open.
ultimately, in his speech last week, President Trump was basically suggesting that reopening the Straits was not the U.S. problem. And in fact, it was a challenge to be solved by other countries that were more reliant upon it.
Yeah, it has been a mixed message at times. Donald Trump's decision, though, to de-escalate the war with Iran has US media questioning his strategy and how he brought Iran to the table. Was it threats or did he run out of options? Heidi Jo Castro has been canvassing reaction.
The U.S. media is
The
not
air
buying
base
Trump's claims of
salsa?
a total and complete victory over Iran, not on the left nor on the right. In fact, almost across the board, they're pointing out the uncertainty of the ceasefire. We'll start with the left-leaning MS Now, which featured this panel discussion shortly
Correct,
after the
Ryan.
ceasefire was announced. This is a retired four-star Army general who did not mince words on his assessment of Trump.
He is unhinged and incoherent and dangerous. And that whole notion of ending a civilization.
Trump's
which
all
couldn't be
bluster,
done,
no
it was
balls.
Sort of a drama queen kind of pronouncement.
The Washington Post ran this headline: Trump's apocalyptic threat paused war, but fueled debate about his credibility. It goes on to report the president's ultimatum drew
So Germany is
condemnation
allowing
across the political
Trump to use the
spectrum
bases
and
there?
intensified open debate about his credibility, morality, and sanity. Now, PBS, that's the Public Broadcasting Service, said much remains unclear after the U.S., Israel, and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. That uncertainty also highlighted by the right-leaning Newsmax, also tempered with some praise. This is Kurt Volker, the former U.S. ambassador to NATO.
Let's all be grateful that President Trump did not try to eliminate a civilization. I think he made the right call. We don't need to go down that road. We need to find a solution. Second, I'm very glad to see that it appears the Iranians have agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
And that last bit was said while the Strait of Hormuz appeared to be open. Its current status has since shifted. Just further evidence of the lack of clarity and fragility of the ceasefire.
Kenneth, it's that lack of clarity, isn't it? We can look back and say, well, we can be glad that things didn't happen, but as PBS said, much remains unclear. What kind of uncertainty what issue does this uncertainty cause then for the rest of the world?
Well, it causes a lot of uncertainty, but I think there was a lot. Whether his comment about civilization is to be taken literally or not, there was a lot of unrest, even on the Republican side, about bombing civilian targets like power plants, like bridges. There was a lot of rejection of that strategy. But the problem is the president ran out of ways to escalate other than introducing ground troops, which he doesn't want to do. So he had to find other ways to escalate. And so he threatened these civilian targets, which was likely a mistake because that will alienate the very Iranian people we expect to support us and who have supported the United States.
NATO head Mark Rutte has been in Washington, D.C., offering alliance help with the conflict, sort of.
If NATO can help, obviously NATO is there. There's no reason not to be helpful. Obviously we will, if that is helpful. But I think we have to do it step by step, because also in NATO that requires then an agreement between all the allies to do that. And I think here the exact structure is less important than the speed.
I'll get to that last line in a minute about structure being less important than speed, Victoria, but gosh, that was a bit of a token offer, wasn't it? If it's helpful or if it's useful, is NATO help of any use here?
Well, I think Mark Rutte is walking an extremely careful line here. Of course, the president has issued a lot of threats about NATO, with a lot of people questioning his commitment to remain in NATO. And so it's to the benefit of the Secretary General to be as open as possible to the possibility. However, we've also seen very strong statements from other European countries, many of whom have been highly critical of the U.S. decision to enter this war. And it would be quite difficult not only for NATO to take a firm role in reopening the straits, but also to navigate the politics within the alliance with the other European countries.
Kenneth, I'll come to you for some final thoughts there. On the Strait of Hormuz, it is obviously one of the conditions of the ceasefire agreement. Mark Rutte there saying the exact structure of reopening would be less important than speed. What is going to happen? Will that reopen within the next 2 weeks?
Well, I think Mr. Trump feels it has to. I mean, how can he go to the American people and say this was a wise idea if it leaves the Strait of Hormuz closed? He can't argue that. And again, as I said, he does not want to be seen as having been blundered. And so I think, he's going to have to reopen it one way or the other, and that may involve some violence, unfortunately.
All right. Kenneth Katzman, Victoria Taylor, thank you both for joining me today. Well, the ceasefire between the US and Iran has been picked apart online, with attacks across Lebanon now dominating the discussion. The American public worried the agreement could already be coming undone. Alex Baird has been following the debate.
Well, it all started with news of a ceasefire, and now this. Lebanon in flames. Israeli bombs killing hundreds of civilians. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy saying it's hard to believe that a rushed agreement doesn't seem to be holding. Former Republican strategist Rick Wilson laying it all at the feet of Trump.
Trump has this up so left, right, and sideways. He has no idea how to escape the trap he's put America in.
Iran's prime minister saying those Israeli attacks in Lebanon violate the ceasefire, rendering negotiations meaningless. Pezeshkian reminding the states that Iran's hands are still on the trigger. Vice President J.D. Vance responding, well, if you want to let this all fall apart over Lebanon,
that's ultimately their choice. We think that would be dumb, but that's their choice.
Some saying the White House would rather let Iran close Hormuz again than let Israel stop its killing. One of the hosts of the independent political podcast, Breaking Point, saying,
anything
what
for
does
Bibi.
It say about the US that we're willing to blow up the global economy over Israel's desire to ethnically cleanse and annex half of Lebanon? The Israeli Prime Minister going viral for multiple comments, this one that the war will continue at any time he chooses.
We are ready to resume the fighting at any moment. Our finger is on the trigger.
Bernie Sanders unsurprised and pushing back. We cannot allow Israel to continue shaping US military and foreign policy. Far-right political activist Laura Loomer has the air of the president, and she sees this all differently, saying Iran is now more legitimized and emboldened than ever before. They cannot be negotiated with, only destroyed. Destruction that the president says he's ready to resume if need be, bigger, better, and stronger. For Trump, America is back.
Alex Bed with that report. Well, that's all from the team here in Washington, D.C. On This Is America, we'll keep following the decisions that shape the US and influence the world. If you want to catch up on this episode, check out our YouTube, aljazeera.com. That's all for now. We'll head back to the team in Doha. Thanks for watching.
All right, guys, thank you all for showing up tonight. I appreciate it, everybody. Belinda, Charisse, Ryan, MPC, Sass, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll be back again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love you all very much. See you soon.